Good afternoon, everyone. The March 10th, 2025 regular council meeting is called to order at 4 o'clock. Council would like to acknowledge the Ucluelethat on whose traditional territories the District of Ucluelet operates. Audience members and delegates are advised that this proceeding is being video recorded and broadcast on YouTube and Zoom, which may store data on foreign servers. Are there any late items? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adopt the March 10th, 2025 regular council meeting as presented?
So moved.
Councillor Hoare, Councillor Anderson, all in favor? None opposed, that carries. There is one delegation this afternoon from the Alberni-Clayoquot Health Network. Ms. DeWitt, the floor is yours.
Is my mic on? There it is. Thank you for having me here today. As most of you know, my name is Marcy DeWitt. I am the coordinator for the Alberni-Clayoquot Health Network. And let's see here. Let's get the hang of the remote. There we go. So the Alberni-Clayoquot Health Network is a multidisciplinary table who originally formed about 2011, went through a bunch of growing pains, figured out our stuff, did some governance work, hit a hard pause, and came back to the table in 2015 with a new refreshed vision of how we were going to work in communities. So from that point on, we really started working closely with communities to look at community health and how we can work as a collective voice to look at this is not quite working for me. Oh, there we go. Social and structural determinants of health. So the Alberni-Clayoquot Health Network focuses on not just the health system, but all of the pieces of health in our communities, building healthy communities that impacts our health. That means that we have close intersections with local governments, and we try to keep you informed. So typically, I try to do a presentation like this once a year. Unfortunately, last year was really busy. And so this year you're getting a little bit of an update on everything that we've done from 2023 till now. So the structure of the ACHN, we have one staff person, just me, and we rely on the convening and collaborative work of all of our partners to really make things happen. So through our structure, we have action tables that we work with in order to pull together individuals that are passionate about specific topics that we've identified as important to move forward for community health. We have kind of our broader network, which is a variety of different community, social, and community partners throughout the region. The Coastal Family Resource Coalition here on the West Coast being a big active component of that, but also other networks throughout the region that we draw from to ensure good information is coming in and good information is going back out into the communities. We also do quite a lot of community engagement directly with the community when we're working on specific projects and ensuring that we're pushing initiatives in the right direction. So constantly having that feedback loop with community. And then we have our table of partners, and that's our leadership table. We have representation from the District of Ucluelet, other municipalities, health services, social services. We have our list there of our 2025 table of partners, and it tends to be quite diverse, tasking folks with bringing information in, and also helping us to work on projects as we move them forward. So with that, we really do a lot of targeted work to build awareness of the needs in the communities and the priorities. And then we also look at building out projects that are identified within that. So never really owning projects ourselves, but pushing them back out into the community and hoping that one of our community partners will take those on. And over the past 10 years, we've seen quite a few big wins for our region. In the last 2 specifically, we've been too busy to come out and report to you last year, but we've had a number of great successes that we've been able to implement and push forward. So we have our little greatest hits that we've been distributing along with our 2024 kind of report back to communities, which is a nice little 1-pager that I've attached for you. So is that yes. So through our various different priority areas, one of the things that we've always focused on is our network development. As I've mentioned, this is the ways that we bring information in, we engage with community, and we engage with other networks throughout the region. So it's not just me working on things. We have a variety of voices coming in. And that consistent participation, consistent community leadership has really helped us to ensure that we can move many of these bigger ticket issues along. So always very appreciative of leadership coming to the table. And just having that ability to move these initiatives even over to the island-wide provincial and national networks that we participate with. So lots of work on network development. That is one priority area that we're always needing to move forward and continue to keep on our radar to build trust, a good environment for collaborative planning and collaborative work. One of our predominant kind of priority areas in the last few years has been poverty reduction. Through this priority area, we've been working on it from 2017 till now. We've been successful in leveraging, I think, $25,000 for building a collaborative action plan for the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District. From that action plan, we've been able to pull forward a variety of different projects. So I wanted to speak to you today about a couple of the projects that we've been working on in the past couple years. One of which was leveraging $40,000 for a equity building toolkit, as well as workshops throughout the region. And I know many in the room were able to participate in the Decolonize First series of workshops that we were able to provide to over 70 individuals in the region, predominantly leadership and folks in helping professions. And we also had the opportunity to work around youth capacity building. So we've done quite a lot of work around youth capacity building, which ties directly into our poverty reduction action plan, acknowledging that those folks are the ones in the region that are the most, I guess, at risk and barriered in terms of buying into our communities. So before I get to that, just one of the pieces, transportation and access to services. Throughout our action plan, this comes up as a recommendation in almost every sphere of the health determinants that we've identified as priorities. And this is one of the, I guess, first priorities that the network identified. We started working on this in 2014. With consultations, I don't know how many community engagement pieces that I've done, both with BC Transit, with the regional district, as well as the initial consultations that we started this work with. But happy to say that we've moved this on to the communities. So as of last year, working with the ACRD, we were really happy to see the transportation system up and running. So working with Eddie to ensure that took shape and we were able to implement a system locally, and now seeing that taken off the sides of everyone's desks and in the capable hands of BC Transit as of last week. So big success for our region and also a really great I guess, illustration of a lot of the work that has been done throughout the community with our West Coast Transportation Working Group, ensuring that that came about through the AAP process and all the way through. And then the advocacy that that group has done to ensure that we also have reliable medical transportation. So our first project was securing the Wheels for Wellness project, or pilot project, moving that through, and then working with Island Health to renegotiate that and ensure that our communities were in the contract for Island Health. And lastly, as I mentioned, our Communities Building Youth Futures project was a project that we were approached for through the Tamarack Institute, in which we were able to secure over $700,000 for youth capacity building in the region. So that was over 2 years. We were successful in hiring a youth facilitator team. So that was for the West Coast, Burnie Valley, and the Barclay communities. And throughout that time, working directly with youth to identify their priorities, we were able to secure ongoing youth safe spaces. So now in Alberni, Barclay, Ucluelet, which already was the model for our safe spaces, but also Tofino and Taloquit communities have youth safe spaces secured. And while that funding kind of pocket has largely been wrapped up last spring, we've managed to leverage some additional funds to make sure that there's a lasting impact for the next couple years. All right. And moving forward, we just adopted our new 2024 strategic plan, really trying to pare down and ensure that we are focused in on what we can accomplish collaboratively, ensuring that there's good shared planning. So again, that network development component is a key factor in ensuring that we can build a safe, trusting environment for this work to happen. And we're also going to be focusing a lot more on our communications and outreach, ensuring that we have well-known, good mechanisms for getting information into and out of our communities. And then lastly, our poverty reduction priority area, moving that forward and updating from our 2022 plan. So we'll just, there we go. So on the horizon for 2025, we have our Building Equity Toolkit, which we would like to present out into communities. So that brings forward data from the Poverty Reduction Action Plan, as well as just kind of key pieces for local decision makers, community services, and others, just to help advocate for things like housing, childcare, and access to services in our regions. We'll be continuing our facilitation and support of local coalitions, and we'll be working with local municipalities on that Poverty Reduction Action Plan updates. So we're looking at doing some one-pagers, identifying useful data, and presenting that out in ways that we can really start benchmarking where we're starting from and where we're moving forward to. So that is our 2024-2023, as fast as I can give it to you. And happy to be here today.
Thanks, Marcy. Is the strategic plan on your website?
It is, as is the Equity Toolkit.
Great, I'll take a look at those. I can't believe it's been since 2014 working on that transportation committee. I remember inviting Wheels for Wellness to a meeting for the first time.
Yeah, and I think that was 2017 that we started the committee. Yeah.
Great. Any questions for Marcy? Councillor Anderson?
I would just have a quick comment. I'm on the ACHN board here, so my comment is like you're doing a great job, and I don't know how you do it. It's like sometimes I see what you're doing, and you're wearing like 30 different hats, and you're corralling so many people, and it's a coordination effort. I don't know how you do that, but great job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marcy, for your presentation.
Thank you all. Have a great rest of your meeting.
Thank you. Is there any unfinished business? Seeing none, there is one bylaw item on our agenda, the 2025 to 2029 5-year financial plan bylaw adoption, and it will be presented by our Director of Finance, Mr. Cadman.
Thank you, Mayor. At the February 11th, 2025 meeting, Council gave the 2025 to 2029 5-year financial plan bylaw the first through third readings and is now in a position to adopt. I'd just like to know that this financial plan is very capital intensive with the water and sewer projects coming online. We have received a lot of feedback from the community, which is very much appreciative, both for and against the budget. And it's been great to see that. I think that I'd like to highlight that, last year we talked about what the next 5 years would look like with the million. This year we took that community feedback and we reduced it to the half a million this year, because we wanted to meet these capital goals while also taking in affordability into account. And with that, I'll leave it up to council.
Thank you. So this budget includes that $500,000, and yeah, I know it's a popular thing for councils to try and keep taxes low, and that's exactly why we're in the position we're in right now, because budgets have not included enough money in capital reserve funds to fix our aging infrastructure, which is what we're faced with right now, and especially because we're looking at building more housing, and our sanitary system is at capacity, if not over capacity in some places. So it's really important that we get that done in order to actually build some housing. And yeah, just a few other points I made as I was looking at the budget. We are heading into a by-election soon, which is going to cost about $30,000 from what I've read and investigated. The Food Bank Society is going to be asking us for further financial assistance. I think that's coming up on our next agenda because of cost overruns with their new building. That's $150,000. That's not included in this budget. And of course we identified, Mr. McIntosh identified, I think it was 14 projects that needed to get done back in our November meeting, and we agreed to borrow about $9 million to service those repairs and the upgrades, and so I would not like to reduce this budget, because that would mean borrowing even more, which means I'm guessing more interest. Am I right there, Mr. Cadman?
That is correct.
Yeah. So anyway, I am in favor of putting this budget through as is, but happy to have feedback from council. Councillor Anderson?
So through the mayor, so it just, I think there was some confusion with some folks around town with, it was $1 million that we threw in last year as part of the budget, and then the idea is that would be year after year. So we'd have $1 million that we were allocating for reserves, and then this year, or see, just so there's clarity, is it another $1 million and plus the 500,000, or is it just the 500,000 that we're asking for? So we're not doing $1 million again and 500,000. It's just the 500,000.
Through the mayor, it's the $1 million is built into the budget from last year, and then plus an additional 500,000 this year.
So sorry, so for total clarity, it's $1 million again plus a 500,000.
That is correct.
So, all right,
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's got the previous package that this was a couple of meetings ago. There were 3 scenarios presented: 400,000, 500,000, and 750,000. And under the $500,000 scenario, the bulk of the homes, 62% of the properties, fall in the category of having their taxes go from $0 to $300 more per year. So I just wanted to point that out, that's that's kind of a big chunk of the properties. That would be the increase, and of course there are a few that that would be looking at more than $300. But yeah, just an interesting statistic. Councillor Mafty.
I considered this at all angles when we were moving forward with it. I've emailed with some of my fellow councillors. I've had lots of conversations with people around town. The way that I look at this issue is one of sort of fiscal responsibility and then also council's responsibility to the community. In terms of fiscal responsibility, the way that I look at it, the way that I understand it, and I'm fairly convinced that I'm understanding it correctly, what we're really talking about in terms of allocating these capital reserves is to pay for things that are like, we know that we're going to have to spend that money on infrastructure. And so it's really a simple question of, do we spend less now and more later, or do we set aside more now with the benefit of, you know, having like more spending power later? I obviously have a lot of sympathy for people whose taxes are going up, and a lot of the letters that we got were from people who were complaining exactly about that. They've got every right to complain, and they have my sympathy. One of the things that struck me is a lot of the letters were written from longtime residents, and a lot of the letters were written from people who were highlighting how they felt that this was problematic for them in the long term. What am I going to do when I retire? What are my kids going to do? How is this going to affect my long-term plans and my long-term investment in this community? And it's specifically through that long-term lens that I think it makes the most sense to be allocating as much money as we can early on. So if someone tells me that they've got concerns about their taxes going up, you know, $300, $400 now, and they're concerned because they want to be here in 10 years and they wonder what that's going to look like, the question I would ask them is, what would you rather do in 10 years? Would you rather have spent that money and have functional infrastructure? Or, you know, are you going to be okay in 10 years when you retire, having your sewers back up, having constant problems, and then having the council of the day ask you for much more money then? I understand that it's never popular, but in terms of the council's responsibility to the community, I think it behooves us to do what is fiscally prudent and fiscally responsible. And, you know, I'm okay taking the sort of the hit now, people saying, oh, council's screwing us over, and 10 years later being able to look back and say, you know what, actually maybe we did the right thing, rather than what the position we're in now, which is looking back 10, 20 years ago and being like, man, whoever was in power then really went for like the quick victory, and now we're picking up the pieces later. So I would support the budget as is, and that's all I've got to say on it.
Thank you for your comments. Councillor Hoare.
Well, I'd kind of echo what Councillor Mafty said. I mean, this is, you know, if people are talking about retiring, the whole thing is, if you start putting $10 a week away when you're 20, you have a lot more money down the line than you do if you suddenly want to retire and you haven't saved anything. So it's all about compounding. And in this case, we have infrastructure that is compounded bad. It's dying in the ground, basically. And if we don't replace it, we're in trouble. And we need money to do that. And we can only afford to borrow so much. I know there's been some commentary about regarding the fire services equipment and replacements and things like that. That is mandated by the insurance underwriters, fire insurance underwriters, I believe it is. And in fact, if we don't do things like replace our fire truck, we will not be able to get insurance for the district, which will affect everybody's costs. So it's horrible that we don't have other access to other monies to pay for things like that. There aren't grants for it. We always have our eyes open for them. The chief is very good at watching for grants for random fire things. But things like that are really expensive. and we really don't have a choice. Our hands are tied, and we need a way to pay for it. And I may not like seeing taxes go up, and as somebody whose property tax assessment went up, unlike everybody, the average that went down, I know that I'm going to have an increase, and it sucks. But I would like to have clean water. I would like to have a functioning sanitary system. And if my neighbor's house is burning down, I would like there to be a functional fire truck to, put it out. So I want it all. Damn it, I demand it all. Yeah, I love our community, and I think that unfortunately there's been a lot of things that have slid a little bit, and we need to fix them.
Great, thank you for your comments. Councillor Anderson?
You saw me thinking. I say, I hear my fellow councillors' feelings on this, so I don't know how much traction I'm going to get with what I'm about to say, but I'm going to propose it anyway based on what I've heard from the community. And I had a discussion with Mr. Cadman. I would never touch the fire services for sure. I'll be sort of upfront about that. When I talked to Mr. Cadman, I asked him about the idea. Well, first of all, I'd say when we had $1 million added on for the reserves, it was quite jarring for people. And even if we see some residential fees that don't seem to go up too much, I spoke to some businesses and some commercial interests where it was quite extensive, in the tens of thousands. It's been a relatively tough year for some in businesses. And I think when I talked to Mr. Cadman about what would be the ramification of having to go back and perhaps cut this back down, and I'm sorry if I'm paraphrasing, you're probably like, oh God, he's going to kill us. It was basically that we wouldn't really have to be removing things for the budget. He could retool the budget, and some things would just be pushed out a little further. There wouldn't be like a ramification as in a fire service or clean water or something that would, have this detrimental effect. It would simply be a timing thing. And I understand the debt servicing ratio here. I know it's extremely important, and I totally get what you're saying, Councillor Mafty, about getting in charge of this credit card that we've got, and if we're just paying the interest, it's not going to help. But I think with the $1 million being so jarring to the community last year, to do another $1 million this year and ask for that level of shock again, plus another $500,000 in today's economic climate, tariffs coming, we don't know what that's going to do to tourism. We don't know what that's going to do for the infrastructure procurement process that's coming up later in the agenda through Mr. McIntosh. There's so many unknowns right now that I feel like the insecurity of the population, and I get people coming up to me, so not everything came in a letter, and people were saying, look, I'm really scared to, I don't think I can pay my business taxes this year. I just can't do it. I have to leave. And I had enough of those that I said, okay, I can't in good conscience, because I was part of this, to say 500,000 looks good to me. Let's get ahead of this thing. But then in lieu of what's the feedback that I got from the public and what we got in the correspondence, I feel that in good conscience, I have to propose to everyone that we stick with the 1 million like we did last year, jarring enough, and we take the 500,000 off the table. But hear me out. And I know we say like there's, this is a we got a tough situation here. We do have pay parking coming online. So we do have a source of revenue. So we do have something, we do have a horizon here. It's not like we're going into a bridge to nowhere. We do have something on the horizon that will. It's not like we're going into this gap and void of unknown for the infrastructure and the borrowing and the debt servicing. We do have something coming down the pipe that will help with that. So and I don't know if it's unpopular or not, but I'm going to propose that we take back the 500,000 and give the residents and businesses sort of a 1-year break on this, and let them retool respectfully.
So I would raise the point that nothing is getting cheaper, and if you postpone infrastructure repairs by even a year, they're going to be even more expensive next year. So that would be my argument against deferring some of these projects by a year or more.
I would tend to agree with that, and I think, I mean, it's, everything's a choice, right? Like I've had a few conversations with, you know, people that I felt comfortable enough to kind of approach it, you know, a little pragmatically, and I say, look, you know, at the end of the day, we could come up with a scenario where no one pays any taxes at all, but like what are you willing to go without? And I think the one thing that everyone recognizes that they need is the basic infrastructure in the community. Like, you know, I'm not trying to make light of anyone's financial stresses. That's something I can empathize with in my own personal life. But, you know, if I had a business or if the Rain Coast Education Society went bankrupt and I still wanted to live in Ucluelet, like I'd still want to be able to flush the toilet and run water down the sink, and like that's what we're talking about. And one thing, I don't want to get off topic, but we received a couple extremely thoughtful, well laid out letters from folks that said, you know, I think maybe one thing that the district should look at, the council should look at, is cutting back expenses in other areas. And the way that I see this reserve fund is it's not an expense. This is something that we're behind on this and we have to catch up. And so if someone says, look, you know, maybe we don't, you know, buy fleet trucks for the parks department, maybe we put a hiring freeze, like there are other austerity measures that I think can reduce the budget that I think we should consider. There are certainly additional expenses that I think we can consider and maybe decline. I know there was lots of interest for, you know, certain like recreational developments, which obviously everyone supports, but at the end of the day, it's like if we can't afford those things, that's where we can trim the fat from the budget. Whereas the infrastructure debt that this community is looking at can only really be responsibly dealt with by building up a capital reserve as quickly as possible. And let's say I understand where you're coming from, Councillor Anderson. Let's say we say, okay, all right, it's like a free year. We're never going to make that up later. You know, we're never going to say, okay, well, we took last year off, so now we're going to add $1 million. Like this, we have good advice that said this is the way that we should do it. And I believe that advice, and it adds up in my head. So I'd rather, as a citizen, see my taxes go up now to add another 500,000 than take the year off and deal with this problem exacerbated later on down the road. Because like whatever complaints you're getting now, you're only going to hear them louder and louder as time goes by, except we'll be better and better able to answer them and say we're actively trying to solve these problems and keep our costs down.
Yeah, I agree with that. And like I said at the beginning, it's not the popular thing for a council to do is to keep taxes low, but that's not going to help our infrastructure because councils for the past many decades have been not putting capital reserve funds away sufficiently.
If I could jump in, and yeah, I totally get what you're saying, and I think it's definitely important to get ahead of the debt servicing on this. And I just want to be clear that I'm not asking for a year off here. We're already doing $1 million again, so that's baked into this. So we have to be clear about this. We asked for $1 million last year for the reserves. We're asking for another $1 million plus the $500,000. All I'm suggesting is to pull the $500,000 off the table for this year. We're not saying you get a free year. We're not saying you get this is a break. You're still going to have a very jarring tax increase for the reserves, which is very important, and we have to get in front of that. But I just want to go on record as saying that, and maybe I could just, and if I could just get some clarification from Mr. Cadman, if we were, and it sounds like I'm in an uphill battle here, but if we were to take the $500,000 off the table, could you, and I know you're on the spot right now for this, what kind of ramifications would we be looking at? And do you think that this is doable? And if I remember our conversation, things just sort of had to be shifted a bit and moved out, but we weren't going to see anything fall off the table.
I think like It's a moving timeline. Like, for example, the water treatment plant on the books is at $9.6 million. As you'll see later today, we just got our Class C, and that's moved up to 13. I think moving ahead and getting ahead and able to pay for these things now puts us in a better position. If we take the 500 grand off the table, then things get pushed, and as Councillor Mafty said, things get more expensive over time. At the end of the day, we will try and take on everything. The longer things get pushed out, we can't account for what those costs will be in the future. It just increases the borrowing timeline, and things will have to get pushed.
So when does pay parking and the when we start to see the fruits of those labors come on? When will we start to see the dividends from that?
That's estimated to come online this summer, but that is also already in this budget, those revenues.
Right. And in the next, say, 2 years from now, what would we conservatively, I don't have the budget in front of me, roughly what would we be expecting in, like, say, 2 years from now as a yearly take in from pay parking?
It's still unsure just because we haven't actually seen any numbers yet, so it's all estimates.
Right.
This year we've have 400 grand as the estimated revenues.
Next year, 400 grand first year. Next year would be roughly ballpark conservative.
Mr. Lawrence, do you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you, through the mayor. So right now we're estimating, we're hoping that we are conservative at $400,000, but there's costs with that. So that's gross revenue, not net revenue.
That's first year though, right?
For this year, right? It's very hard to predict year over year without any historical data. So it would be very challenging for staff to give council an idea of what the potential is for like next year until we get a full year under our belts,
Right.
and then even a couple of years under our belts, and then we can start sort of forecasting what the regular revenue is. Now, with parking, because of the nature of how we're receiving those funds through tourism, a good year, right, we'll see those revenues increase. This year, with what's going on in the world today politically, from stuff ahead, from the south of the border, we might see a lower return on visitors into our community. At the same time, we might see a lot more Canadian visitors come out. We just don't know. So forecasting out and saying we can count on X amount of revenue or a growth of revenue in parking would be something that I think Mr. Cadman and myself would be very, very nervous about providing for council, and we couldn't bank on it.
Would it be fair to say, like, if you have 400,000 for this year, it would be a partial year, obviously, because you're just getting it going halfway through the year, and that would also
That's
400
gross revenue, though, not
So that
net.
doesn't include taking off like the servicing fees and what we have to do to get this up and running. Does that?
Correct.
So
that,
yeah,
that wouldn't be next year. So next year we would, if you assume 400,000 this year, you would definitely assume more next year because you're not.
Well, through the mayor. So right now we have an anticipated start time for the program sometime in May. So our heavy tourist season is May through September into October. November, December, January, February, pretty slow. So I think we will see the predominant amount of our revenue come in through the summer, and we'll hit most of that. But again, it's all guesswork at this point in time. We have lots of numbers. We have lots of data as to how many visitors Ucluelet sees on an annual basis. We projected low, and there's a good reason for that, is that we don't want to over-project revenues and then come up shy and then be in trouble. I did want to add one comment just about the infrastructure deficit that we're seeing here. So as Mr. Cadman said, yes, we can push out, and Councillor Anderson requested that, yes, it could be moved out, but there's a significant risk to the municipality there. So as we push out infrastructure replacement and upgrades, when our infrastructure is at its max capacity at the end of its useful life, this is when we enter into the realm of emergency repairs. Emergency repairs are generally speaking, and my director of engineering, Mr. McIntosh, can confirm this or adjust for me, is about 150% of the actual replacement costs. So whenever you push something out, you run the risk of paying 100 and 150% of the actual cost because you're doing it in an emergent situation. And we're talking about lift stations right now. And there is no way not to repair those. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done today. So pushing those out has a significant financial implication for the community if you don't plan for those repairs in advance. And we are already 10 years behind when we should have undertaken those repairs.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. And we are looking at building some housing fairly quickly, like Minato Bay, for example. And we can't even service those homes with our existing infrastructure. Is that right, Mr. Cabin?
That's correct.
So if we want housing and we want it quickly, I think it behooves us to quote Councillor Mafty, to put as much into repairing that infrastructure as possible. So if there's no further comments, I will make the motion that Council adopt the District of Ucluelet 2025 to 2029 Financial Plan Bylaw number 1370, 2025. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Hoare seconds. Any further discussion?
I would very quickly just reiterate my point that I do think that we should seriously look at some of the suggestions we received to see where we can trim fat in other parts of the budget moving forward. I'd still maintain that we enjoy a service level and a diversity of amenities that I'm personally very grateful for here, but that are disproportionate to a community of 2,000 people. And I think that there might be room to sort of satisfy both parties moving forward.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. Good discussion. There are 5 report items. The first report item is Deputy Corporate Officer and Freedom of Information and Privacy Protection Head. This report will be presented by our CAO, Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you, Mayor. This report is to appoint Mr. Ed Chow, welcome, as our new Manager of Corporate Services. As part of his roles and responsibilities, he is appointed as Deputy Corporate Officer as well as the head of Freedom of Information and Privacy Protection Head. It also will, this report will rescind the appointment, a very temporary appointment of myself as the head of the Freedom of Information and Privacy Protection, and Miss Nancy Owen as Deputy Corporate Officer. So this is a legislative requirement to ensure that we have the people authorized to undertake the work and are designated as responsible for these aspects of our legislative requirements. If you have any questions, happy to answer them.
Any questions for Mr. Lawrence? Seems pretty straightforward. I think there are 3 recommendations and they can be made together.
I got this.
Councillor Hoare?
I will move that council appoint Mr. Ed Chow as Deputy Corporate Officer, and also that council appoint Mr. Ed Chow as the Freedom of Information and Privacy Protection Head, and further, that council rescind the appointment of Ms. Nancy Owen as Deputy Corporate Officer and Mr. Dwayne Lawrence as Freedom of Information and Privacy Protection Head. And I note that there's a small typo in that third one. I read it correctly, but it says rescind the appoint, so you're missing the meant.
Meant. Thank you, Councillor Hoare. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Mafty seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed. That carries.
Welcome, Ed.
The next report item is ACRD Multi-Use Path, Up Cheeks Tashi Trail, and will be presented by the Director of Engineering Services, Mr. McIntosh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So before we can begin, I'd just like to acknowledge a mistake in the financial table of your report. And it's just a mistake in the annual contribution from ACRD, and I will clear that up in just a moment. If you need anything more formal for me to clear that up, please just let me know. So this purpose of this report is to ask for Council's consideration to extend Ucluelet Parks Department's maintenance services beyond the junction where they currently maintain. And the extension would be from the junction to the boundary of the National Park Reserve. The services, the maintenance park services that they currently undertake are regular mowing, danger tree removal, salt and snow application in the winter, and general sweeping of that multi-use path. So a brief summary is in your report, Council, and I'll just highlight it here for your benefit and others. So prior to 1996, there were segments of path from Tofino through the national park, none to Ucluelet. In 1996, the District of Ucluelet installed a water line and then installed a trail on top of that water line. Shortly later, in 1998, the ACRD board established the South Long Beach multi-purpose local path service and started contributing $3,600 per year for the Ucluelet Parks Department to maintain that path. In 2011, the CAO reported an annual internal spend of in between $7,000 and $39,000 annually to maintain that path. In 2013, the ACRD increased their annual contribution to $7,000 to the District of Ucluelet. In 2019, in anticipation of extending the path and building a new path from the junction to the National Park Reserve, the ACRD engaged with Ucluelet and garnered council support to extend the services. That support allowed the ACRD to construct that new path. In 2024, the path was completed, 2024 rather, the path was completed, and ACRD then offered an additional $7,000 for the Parks Department to maintain the extra path. Here's the extra path. In 2025, where we are now, the ACRD anticipates and expects that the Ucluelet Parks Department will initiate maintenance of this new path segment. There are two subpoints here for Council to consider. It's the allocation of the current Parks Department, which is substantial and reasonably full. And so it's believed that an extension of the Parks Department services beyond the junction, the current service, is a bit of a zero-sum game. So increasing the area might decrease service quality in other areas, something to consider. And that's with the current tools, equipment, personnel number, training, and techniques. The second subpoint here to consider, Council, is that there's no formal agreement for refurbishment, so that's capital replacement to repair, replace, refurbish things like asphalt when the existing and future park path start to deteriorate. And so this is many millions of dollars of path here from the mill stream to the junction and then beyond to the national park. So while Council considers the municipal responsibility for this regional service, I'd just like to share those updated figures for you. We have 4 columns here, three that are really important. So the Millstream to Junction section, the proposed junction to Pacific Rim National Park Reserve, and then the proposed total, so those two combined. In the Millstream to Junction, we see that the district cost here is about $16,000, and the ACRD annual contribution is about $7,000. What's left to pay for the District of Ucluelet is about $9,800. So this makes a proportional share. The ACRD is contributing roughly 72% to that 16% of the annual fee, and District of Ucluelet is paying about 58% of that $16,000, that annual contribution, to maintain the regional service. Next column is the proposed junction to the Pacific Rim National Park Reserve. So this is the extension of the path. Here we see it get a little bit more equitable. So the ACRD would contribute an additional $7,000 per year. This segment of path is a little bit, quite a bit shorter, half the size. It's 1.2 kilometers. So it would cost UCLUIT $6,300 to maintain this path. And so now the $7,000 contribution is actually paying for all the services and bringing a little bit of money even to the District of UCLUIT. So for easy math, we've just zeroed out those figures at the bottom. So here, ACRD is fully paying for that service. When we bring all of that to the right, the proposed total mill stream to the Pacific Rim National Park Reserve, we see it now costs about $23,000 to maintain that full 4.4 kilometers. And this equates to ACRD contributing about 61% for the annual maintenance of that regional service. And this will cost the District of UCLUIT a remainder of about $9,000, bringing their contribution, the municipal contribution, to $39,000. So thank you for that, Council. So that is the correction from your report. Please disregard the figures in your report and include this into your decision-making process. So there's a suite of options here for Council to consider, 4 options. Option A is to direct staff to go back to the ACRD and negotiate a higher figure for the ACRD to contribute to the municipality to extend the services. So under this option, Council would direct the Parks Department to begin servicing right to the national park boundary and then direct staff to negotiate a higher figure. So ideally, the region would pay for the regional service and the municipality would not be paying for the regional service, but could undertake the work. In option B, Council would direct staff to extend the Parks Department service to the regional national park and accept their offer as it is. So that would be $7,000, which is the current contribution, and an additional $7,000, which is the future contribution, so $14,000. In option C, Council would direct staff to not accept the new proposed extension for the maintenance and just maintain the current service to the current boundary, which is the junction. So we would continue to receive a contribution of $7,000 annually and not extend the service to the Pacific Rim National Park boundary. And this would require the ACRD to find an alternative means of maintaining the regional service. Last, in option D, the far end of the spectrum, here Council is directing UCLUIT Parks Department to pull back the service right to the district boundary and not maintain the regional service whatsoever and leave it up to the ACRD to find alternative measures to fund and maintain the regional service. So that's all the options, Council. I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. McIntosh. This is a great example of cutting expenses by finding someone else to pay for them.
It's almost as if whoever put this agenda together saw the theme running through it.
Any questions for Mr. McIntosh? No, I think it's pretty straightforward. I guess my question would be, is the ACRD aware that that we want to renegotiate this because they're in the middle of their budget process as well?
Thank you, Mayor. So they're not directly aware that Council will be directing staff to renegotiate for a higher figure. We were waiting for Council's directions first, and that will be part of our next steps. So we'll reach out to the ACRD imminently and begin that conversation. Part of this renegotiation is a levels of service and maintenance plan, and also a capital plan to replace that asphalt. So we were discussing this today. So depending on their response, it could trigger a follow-up report to Council, or perhaps just an increase in the contribution and then beginning of that service.
Great. And I note that you are, as part of this, formalizing agreements regarding service levels, financial commitments, and capital investment responsibilities, which makes perfect sense. And I have had some complaints about tree roots kind of breaking up the asphalt along that path. No other questions for Mr. McIntosh? There is a recommendation if someone would like to make it.
I actually have a question.
Okay, Councillor Hoare.
So I know we don't have anything formal for repairing broken up asphalt due to tree roots or whatever. Have there been occasions in the past where we've had any reason to have to do a repair? And did we foot the bill? Did we split the bill? What happened?
Through the mayor, that's a great question. Yes, we have, the District of Euclid has paid for refurbishments from the millstream to the boundary. So this is roots, floods that deteriorate the asphalt and erode the base beneath, and the asphalt paves away, et cetera, et cetera. And so that mentioning of the 2011 CAO reporting out that there was in between $7,000 and $39,000 of annual cost, that's an indication of that CAO at that time, I think, reaching out and or publicizing, hey, there's unaccounted for costs here that really range in spectrum depending on what's happening in the year for refurbishments that aren't being adequately compensated for from the regional service.
Okay, so we actually we paid for all of those repairs in the past.
Through the mayor,
Along that section.
that's right, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions from council? Would someone like to make the recommendation?
I'd be happy to make a motion, but it wouldn't be the recommended one. I'd move that we consider D. It seems that immediately following a discussion about how businesses are struggling and we're worried about burdening the citizens of Ucluelet with unnecessary expenses, taking on a financial commitment to maintain an asset that is outside of our municipal boundary sounds like a really obvious place to start trimming the fat. And just to be clear, if anyone wasn't like watching on YouTube or whatever, like what we're talking about is paying money to maintain a trail that's not even within the district of Ucluelet. I understand that it serves the region, but we're here to serve the people of Ucluelet, and I don't see that we have the disposable income to be spending money outside of our municipal boundaries at this point. So I would move D.
Is D within the municipality though? Sorry, am I reading that wrong?
Through the mayor, option D is to Millstream within the municipality.
Right. So that is within D is.
Yeah, but if we go with D, it basically says we'll maintain up to the boundary of the municipality, but no further. Every other option sees us maintaining trail that's outside of our municipal boundary.
That's correct.
Yes, but looking to the ACRD to reimburse us for that.
Not fully though.
Mr. McIntosh, it's a negotiation, correct?
So here, if we're talking about option D.
No,
yes.
option A?
So option A is a renegotiation to extend the service all the way to the Pacific Rim National Park boundary.
And negotiate with the ACRD to compensate us for that.
To compensate, hopefully fully for that service.
Fully, yes.
Okay, well, what happens if they come back and they say, well, we'll give you 75%?
It's quite likely. And in that case, we'd be coming back to council to update on how that negotiation went.
So we could always pick D later.
Yeah, option A is giving staff the opportunity to negotiate.
Okay.
But-
I guess my comment would be then the direction that I'd give staff is tell them that we don't want to pay for any of it. At least that's my take on it.
That would be my first choice as well.
Take the hard line.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I love trails,
I'm-
but
I totally agree.
All the way
I
to
totally
Tofino then,
agree.
Like,
We're paying to maintain the trail that is not within the municipality. And
And it's been at a loss for
at a
many
loss
years.
for a
So-
significant amount of time.
So this is a chance to correct that. Yes, Mr. McIntosh is nodding his head. So
okay, all right, then I'm okay with it as long as it's clear to the like, I feel like if this is the case, then what we're doing is empowering staff to go to the ACRD and say, look, we're not trying to be jerks here, but like the gravy train has stopped because we need to put our money into the sewers.
Exactly. So would you like to change your
Yeah,
motion?
sure. Okay, so I'll move. Here we go. After all that, I'll move that council directs staff to engage with ACRD to negotiate a cost-sharing maintenance agreement inclusive of service levels and future capital requirements for the multi-use path.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Councillor Anderson seconds. Any further discussion?
Toe the hard line.
All in favor? None opposed. That carries.
Thank you.
You've got your marching orders, Mr.
That's right.
McIntosh.
We will share nothing.
The next report item is contract authorization for general engineering services and will also be presented by our Director of Engineering Services, Mr. McIntosh.
Madam Mayor, this agenda item is asking for council to consider authorizing a general engineering services standing agreement. Municipalities, large and small, benefit from these types of agreements. So from Vancouver to Nanaimo, Victoria, Port Alberni, Ladysmith, Tofino, and Ucluelet all have benefited from these type of agreements. What the benefit is that they streamline civil engineering procurement. So they allow a municipality to direct award straight to a single firm, saving time, cost, and complexities in that procurement process. They increase the design cost predictability. They also obtain unbiased civil development review, very important for municipalities, large and small. And they also provide access to highly technical civil engineering expertise that often municipality staff don't have necessarily. So Ucluelet has benefited from such an agreement for about 2 decades on and off, and this agreement lapsed in 2022, and we've been dealing with it on a case-by-case, as-needed basis. So the timing is now essentially a good time to renew that agreement or go back out to market and start it again anew because of all the engineering and infrastructure that we're about to undertake with housing needs and upgraded infrastructure, et cetera. So the nature and structure of this type of agreement is that it's a non-exclusive 3-year standing agreement where the municipality gives the winning engineering firm the first right of refusal on engineering services for that 3-year period. There is no cost of the contract. What the municipality is doing is locking the engineering firm into their personnel fees. There is no guaranteed work for the engineering firm. What the municipality here is doing is, as work becomes available and needed, they offer that first right of refusal to the engineering firm. So no real guarantees locked in structure here, other than the municipality provides that first offer to the winning engineering firm. In January of this year, we published a request for proposals and went out to market asking area professionals to submit their proposals. We received a very competitive response. So 5 engineering firms provided proposals. We reviewed each one and ranked them for price, expertise, relevant experience, and availability to begin providing service immediately. Among all those received and ranked, Coors and Associated floated among the top and proved to be offering the highest best value to the District of Ucluelet. So why Coors and Associates? Coors is a small personal firm located in Parksville, BC. They're a team of about 30 engineers and support staff. And the District of Ucluelet has worked on and off with Coors and Associates for about 30 years in a similar agreement. And they've completed up to 130 assignments for the District of Ucluelet. They have very competitive pricing right in the middle. They have highly expert staff that are always available for Ucluelet staff. and they're here and ready to take on our next steps with infrastructure services. Two options available for council, and I'm here to answer any questions if needed.
Thank you, Mr. McIntosh. Do we know why the agreement expired in 2022 and was not renewed? Was it just...
Madame Mayor, it expired in 2021. We renewed it for a 1-year extension, and then it reached the limits of its sort of contract obligation. And the reason it wasn't renewed is we got busy.
Okay. And the 5 proposals that were received were all very competitive, you said.
Very much.
Great. Any questions for staff? All right, there is a recommendation if someone would like to make it.
I'll move that council authorize the mayor and corporate officer to enter into an agreement between the District of Ucluelet and Coors and Associates Engineering Limited for general engineering consulting services for a period of 3 years.
Thank you, Councillor Mafty. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Hoare seconds. Any further discussion?
I just get a quick question.
Councillor Anderson?
So this is essentially just, I don't have anything demonstrably egregious about this, but do you find that, like, this is basically putting an engineering company on retainer? Is that how I could look at that?
Well, so there's no retainer received. There's no funds exchanged to hold the contract.
Right.
It's a standing, open, non-exclusive agreement for the civil engineering firm.
The only red flag coming up for me, and help me understand this, I think maybe I'm off base here. If we had a project and there was another engineering company that could do this for cheaper, the Coors would still have first right of refusal, so we wouldn't be able to go for that. We wouldn't RFP that. We're locked in to Coors.
Yep, that's right.
And I believe this is a standard procedure with all municipalities. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And in your opinion, and I'm being honest, like your opinion, the bullet points here for the pros outweigh the cons in this case.
Yep, that's right.
Cost.
Yeah, through the mayor. So Coors has provided the structure of the RFP was to it established a sort of conceptual year. And provided a certain amount of hours that it could take to undertake a certain amount of administration, engineering, contract management, etc. And then, so with that concept year, it asked all of the engineering firms to provide their rates and their fees to complete that year. And so Coors and Associates was right in the middle of that personnel. So as I've shared and as they've provided, they're a very fair priced engineering firm. Right in the middle. So there were some higher, much higher, and there were some lower. And so that's ultimately best value in the totality of their proposal.
Right. And how often would we go outside of Coors? Like just like randomly, if you had a number, like is there some projects where Coors that's not their thing, right?
Yep, certainly. So part of the sort of non-exclusive nature of the contract is that we are allowed through the contract to hire other specialty engineering services. So, for example, mechanical, geotechnical, geoscience, electrical engineering, architectural, landscape architecture, etc.
Yeah.
Those other specialty professional services, we are allowed to hire those directly, and there's terms in this contract to have Coors be a prime consultant for that if it benefits the community or the district, and also would be completely not part of that procurement if it's chosen by staff that it's the most advantageous way for that specific case. So it's really a fairly open, non-exclusive contract in that way.
All right, fair enough. Thank you for that answer.
Any other questions for staff? All right, call the question. All in favor? None opposed. That carries. And the next report item is Peninsula Road four-way stop sign and will also be presented by the Director of Engineering Services, Mr. McIntosh.
Okay.
Great photograph, by the way.
Best appendices ever.
Thank you. So upon council's request, we have included this item in your agenda for review, debate, consideration, and resolution. So there it is. We'll just start there. And so included in your report is a chronology and reasoning that led to the conversion of the four-way stop. So I won't get into it too much, council. You have all the details. The one primary purpose of the four-way stop in the specific application was to distribute starts, stops, and wait times equally among all users. Second benefits are providing pedestrian access to the other side of the road, where there's now a path and a bus sign. As well, with this four-way stop, we're signaling to those coming in from the highway, essentially, that stop, you're now in a downtown community. So we want to acknowledge that all transportation features have pros and cons and are highly contentious. I share this photo as sort of a gesture that there are pros and cons to all transportation features, and ultimately we're under council's direction looking to do whatever is best for council and the community. So I also share this with a sort of conciliatory manner because the project went through design, it went through community engagement, several, and it went through design presented to council, including a committee of the whole. That said, this specific conversion was never explicitly presented to council to vote. And it was wrapped within the totality of the entire project. So therefore I present that in sort of a conciliatory manner and suggest that council could vote on that today. Thank you.
Thank you. I was surprised to read the background that it was even prior to 2019 that it was considered. That was interesting. Any questions for staff?
Not a question, but I will say, as someone who uses that four-way stop regularly trying to get onto Peninsula Road, the four-way makes a huge difference.
I found that too. I actually will go that way now, whereas I never used to go that way before because it would take way too long to get onto Peninsula. So it has created sort of a new path to get onto Peninsula. So it's great.
I'd like to make two comments. I realize that this has sort of become an albatross around my neck here, but I want to say three things. The first is that my initial objection, was really framed within a desire to open up a discussion, which I feel that we got that. But my own personal objections were a safety one, and one of the things that I mentioned is that I felt that there's a real danger that stop signs create if people don't stop. And at the time that this came up in council chambers, I said, our offices are there and I see cars going through it all the time. Nancy and James came out, we hung out and took that lovely photo. We were there for probably 5 minutes. And even in that 5 minutes, a car went through that intersection at full speed. And so I do think that there is a safety concern. Obviously the bulk of the feedback from the community was that the stop sign is there, and it's not my role or any councillors to override the will of the community. But I do think that there is a safety consideration, and I think that perhaps there might be a better way to treat this particular intersection. If people are happy with the way it is now, my next concern is that we're already receiving letters from people asking for stop signs explicitly to calm traffic, which is not what they're designed for. And I'm worried that this is going to start like a creep whereby we're going to have more and more and more signs with all of the problems that come on afterwards. Like the city of Paris, huge city, they don't have any stop signs. There are lots of communities that have great road safety without stop signs and without excessive signage. So at my peril, I'll suggest that we should consider the wider discussion that goes beyond this one sign at this one intersection. And like I said, I was worried about safety, and you yourself saw that car zip through, and let me tell you, that's not the first or even the 10th that I've seen go through that intersection. We've heard from RCMP came in and said the same thing, that that's something we're working on. People don't know the signs there, they go through it. If we add more and more signs, we're going to create more and more problems, is my opinion. So I think we should be very careful about how we install more signs, and I personally would like to see what Modi has to say about speed reductions, and I would like to see a more considered approach to a community-wide strategy.
Thank you, Councillor Mafty. I actually agree with you on all of that. And we have had one request, I think it was our last council meeting, for a potential stop sign, and it was referred to staff. Am I right, Mr. Lawrence? To come up with a report. But yeah, I agree. We don't want signs everywhere, and especially if people are not obeying them. Mr. McIntosh?
Mayor, may I speak to that?
Yes.
So in the next steps of your report include a note that we have engaged with MOTI for a request to lower the speed limit on Peninsula Road from 70 to 50%, to 70 kilometers an hour to 50 kilometers an hour. So we're just waiting for their response now. There'll be some sort of formal back and forth as part of that engagement, and we'll update council as soon as we know more. And then the second point, also in your report, council, is that there is a draft traffic mitigation policy that's 100% complete, and just waiting to come back to council anytime council directs us to. And what that traffic mitigation policy does is it's a 4-step policy. The first step is that the community points out a concern. The second step is that the department considers it, and so there's a criteria for considering a true traffic challenge. The third step is that the staff come up with options and present those to council for consideration. And then the last step is that staff implement that traffic mitigation measure. And so those 4 steps in that traffic mitigation policy are really well crafted to ensure that stop signs aren't just going out through all of the community every time someone asks for them, or the community doesn't end up with a panoply of speed bumps throughout the entire town, et cetera, et cetera. And so I leave that for you to consider to direct staff if wanted.
Great. I think that would be a wonderful idea. Councillor Hoare?
The conversation that's undergoing with Modi, that's the reduction from 70 to 50, like prior to Monado Road, correct? Like where out towards Ancient Cedars Trailhead, is that correct?
Through the mayor, that's right. So the scope, or I guess boundary of where that stops and starts, is still yet to be determined.
Any other questions,
Can I ask
Councillor Mafty?
one quick question through the mayor? Is there any merit or value in considering a third option, which is replacing the 2 new stop signs with yield signs? I understand the commentary that it's reduced wait times for people turning onto Peninsula. That makes sense to me. So I see that as like, I'd rather the sign wasn't there, but there is a benefit. And I'm wondering if the same benefit would be achieved with a yield sign. That if it functions properly, indicates that if anyone has the priority, the traffic would yield. But if there's nobody there, then you don't have to stop. Like if you're on Peninsula and there's a car waiting to turn, the yield sign means that you have to give that car priority. If there's no car on either side, then you don't have to stop, come to a full complete stop before continuing.
So through the mayor, under council's direction, we could really investigate anything, and we could come back to council with again options and pros and cons and consideration.
I think you've already posed for the photo.
Well, that's because James had a gun in his pocket. Did you see how he had his hand in his pocket? He goes, "You better smile." No, I'm kidding.
You posed under duress, is what you're saying.
I'll pose for a photo with a yield sign.
But you've already posted the stop signs too.
That's right.
Have we?
I'm not gonna die on this hill. I'll tell you that.
Don't die on this hill.
Councillor Hoare.
Just wondering if we've engaged with the commercial traffic. I'm just wondering what the general opinion is with the commercial vehicle traffic. Delivery trucks, the
Fish plant
fish trucks. Yeah, I'm just wondering if I just don't know if they've been spoken to because they have a very different view. I mean, me as a resident wanting to be able to turn on Peninsula, I have one view, but the ones that are traveling along Peninsula Road, in a large vehicle, which is hard to stop on a dime, as we all know.
School buses. Lots
School buses. Yeah, no, I just wondering if we've engaged with them.
Through the mayor, so through the community engagement process, we held two open houses, where the community showed up and put their sticky notes onto the design. And some of those sticky notes, I regret that I didn't bring a photo. Some of those notes included, please install four-way stop signs. So we've heard from the community in that manner. The sort of distribution of users, do they all show up in equal proportions at a community open house? That's an open question, sort of a statistical or philosophical one. That said, when we were doing the installation, I did spend time actually riding in fish trucks, transportation trucks, with local truck drivers who were concerned about the turning movements and some of the signage, etc. So the result of that is you see mid-construction, you see the turn at Seaplane Base Road, a curb was removed and a curb was opened up. So that's a result of me engaging with the local trucking community, looking at signage and turning movements. You also saw the same happen on Bay Street. And so I would share that, yes, there was engagement with the trucking community. It was me sitting in a truck asking, how does this thing work for you? To the extent, is it proportional for the entire user group of all truckers moving through the community and commenting on signage, etc.? I would say not completely.
I appreciate that there was some engagement. I was just curious because I know at the open houses, because I was present, I didn't see a lot of the people that I know are driving through those stop signs with large vehicles, like weekly, daily. But thank you for that.
Any other questions for staff?
I would like to get a photo of you in one of those trucks next time you go to Independence.
Maybe there was a selfie?
Not for this one, just a story.
Okay, there is a recommendation if somebody would like to move that.
I can do that.
Councillor Anderson?
Oh God, I'm in the neither world here. Oh, I'll get it. Four-way stop sign. I lost my. I'll move the council support the continued use of the four-way stop at the intersection of Peninsula Road and Bay Street.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Councillor Hoare seconds. Further discussion? I do like the idea of the traffic mitigation policy that's being developed. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries.
I can't back down now.
I feel like there's a bright red albatross shaped sign.
Yeah.
Admire that. Admire the resolve.
You should have seen that car fly through there.
Without even slowing down, just straight through.
Yeah. Spectacular. I should have jumped in front of it, and then I would have had an airtight case. I'd have been like, dude, do you see what happens here?
Well, I will say that, I can stand in the staff room and watch locals blow through the large stop sign at the top of Main Street.
Yeah, that happens all
Hourly.
the time.
Yeah.
Well, minutely, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's an accident waiting to happen, and yet no accident has ever happened there. Go figure.
right.
All right, the last report item is temporary use permit for 1054 Helen Road and will be presented by the Director of Community Planning, Mr. Gregg.
Thank you, and through the mayor. So this is a temporary use permit. Essentially, I'll just give a really brief overview. The owners of the property are asking for a temporary use permit for some vacation rentals. Really, they plan to renovate their house and suite in sequence. And would like the flexibility and, I imagine, the revenue from some short-term vacation rentals during the period of renovating their home. I would point out that the bed and breakfast use is already a permitted use on the property, so up to 3 rooms could be used for vacation rental, guest accommodation, or 6 guests, within the house. So this is more about flexibility. The temporary use permit would give flexibility in the location of the vacation rentals within the home. They'd like to be able to alternate between live in the house and renovate it and put vacation rentals in the suite, or flip and live in the suite and renovate it while they have some vacation rentals in the home. And so it really gives them the flexibility for the time and again, the revenue during the renovations. But the owners would be proposing they would still be living in the home throughout, like with a bed and breakfast. So therefore, sort of all this, in sort of staff opinion of this may be a good use of a temporary use permit. And I just would note that back in December, council had a discussion, you'll recall, around growth in housing and tourist accommodation. And so there was certainly a desire for a limited growth of tourist accommodation, and some discussion around sort of the control and sort of judicious deployment or award of the vacation rentals as part of that. And it seems like this may be an example worthy at least of discussion, where sort of a local family renovating, having these sort of unique circumstances are one that sort of came forward. And we thought, okay, this is one that council should certainly see and have an opportunity to discuss. So I would just note, I'll certainly see if there's any questions, I'll try and answer them. If the applicant wishes to speak, they should be given an opportunity as well. Notification has been given for the temporary use permit, so council should provide an opportunity for the public to provide input if they wish as well. So there, I'll just see if there's any questions.
Thank you. I see that the home has provided below market rental units to community members since 2018. So it has been used for permanent residents, or at least staff.
Correct. It has been long-term tenants in the past, and currently the regulations that are there, which are somewhat to protect the conversion of secondary suites to short-term vacation rentals, say we have this provision in the zoning bylaw where the business or the license for a new bed and breakfast can't be in a space that was formerly a secondary suite. So that's where this temporary use permit would allow them during this period of renovation to essentially do that. But it's a temporary use permit. It's not making a permanent conversion to now a vacation rental long-term.
And so in the report, it says once the temporary use permit time period is complete, the unit would return to the long-term rental stock, or could be used to house aging relatives.
Through the mayor, correct. It would just be a secondary suite again, only now a renovated one, presumably.
Right. Questions for staff? Councillor Anderson?
Okay. So the idea is, I'm just trying to. Sometimes I think like there's some common sense involved here, but I think if I'm for this temporary use permit personally. I don't think you should even need it personally. I find it's interesting that I've got a question. If they sold their house and someone else bought the house, does that person, are they still beholden to having a long-term renter down there, or would they be able to do a short-term rental based on the zoning?
So through the mayor, a new owner and the current owner could have the bed and breakfast use, which is permitted under the zoning, except the bed and breakfast use, the way it's defined, is rooms within the home. It's the using a space that was a long-term rental suite and converting that to the B&B, that loss, which Euclid has seen numerous suites converted to the B&B. That is what the zoning now precludes, saying you can still add it, just don't take away their suite. Is essentially how the zoning is set up. So yes, temporary use permit has a time limit. It expires, and say in the future, then that space would still, the suite would be used as a suite. The property could add vacation rental, but just not in that space, not take away the suite.
So
if you will.
but if they sold the home, right? Say the proponent sold it, I bought it. Am I allowed to use that space as a short-term rental?
You can use the home for short-term rental, but not, you could use, other space within the house, do an addition, whatnot, but not displace the secondary suite which exists for the short-term rental. That's how the zoning is.
You can
is
see
set
how
up.
this would be problematic. I'm just thinking, if I'm a buyer of a home, and how do I know if there was a long-term renter there? And like that would basically devalue. So if I wanted to go there and go with like the B&B rules, the short-term rental rules, and say that I need a mortgage helper, I'm not going to have a long-term renter. I'm not interested in that. But I would do a short-term rental in my basement. I just bought a house, and then so I buy the house. I'm in there. Then I go to get the license. You're like, oh, look at this. There was someone living in that basement 5 years
That would
ago.
have to be disclosed though, Sean, as the seller.
Would it?
Yeah, you can't. Yes.
Can you show me where it says that? Because I don't think that's true.
Through the mayor, it would be a matter of doing the due diligence of somebody knowing what they're purchasing. And so anyone, and we see this frequently, we get requests where someone come in and say, what were the building permits? So if the building permit and business license information, that's something we would routinely be able to disclose, that if there was no business license for a bed and breakfast, the zoning explains that you can't put a new B&B use in that secondary suite. The building permit that was approved showed the space as a secondary suite. Someone doing their sort of basic due diligence would kind of see that. if you
Basic due diligence. But there could be 5 years ago, there could have been someone living in a basement, and this could change. This house could change hands twice, and someone could buy this house, and they go to play by the rules and get a short-term rental in their basement, and find out, oh, I can't do this now. I called the province about this in the landlord tenancy branch, and they thought this was their purview, and they don't appreciate it when municipalities step into this realm. Because this does affect property values, and that's my personal fact. And I get the idea that once, we're definitely in a space now where we're out of balance, and I get that there's a crusade against, sometimes against STRs. I'm sure that the timing on that is probably apropos because of where we're at with affordable housing. But I think once we get that balance right, where we actually have these places for people to stay, and we don't just try and cram them in other people's basements, then I think we can have a better discussion about this kind of thing. But I would propose that we get rid of that rule when that time comes. But yeah, that's
That would be a matter of amending the bylaw.
right, and that's what I would propose. But again, once we get to that balance, that it makes sense.
Yep. No, I see where you're coming from. Questions for staff? You look like you have one, Councillor Rafty.
I'm really struggling with this one because I'm cognizant. Well, this is unrelated to the main issue, but I'm struggling with this because I don't know if it's relevant or not. But since I've sat on this council, I've had to recuse myself on a number of occasions to avoid any conflict of interests, actual or perceived. Mostly that's arisen from my involvement with the res. And one of my understandings is that as counselors, we have to approach every issue, not having made up our mind, impartial, and, not having expressed support for one outcome or another. And I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus, but if a citizen approached me and asked me for my support on an issue that was coming to council, and I said, yeah, I'm going to totally support you on that, it would be difficult for me to go in and vote on that issue and maintain that I did not have a vested interest in one outcome or another before I had made that decision. And I'm a little bit taken aback by the email here in Appendix A that basically says, I fully agree that you should be granted permission for this and support you in this matter. And, one of the counselors is CC'd on that email. And I don't think that anything bad is happening. I don't think that there's any impropriety, but I wanted to just highlight this issue before we vote on it.
What page are you looking at?
Appendix A. Yeah.
66.
Sorry.
I'm not trying to be cryptic, but Sean, you're CC'd on an email that's basically saying, that's literally saying, I fully agree with you that you should be granted permission for this and support you in this matter.
Aren't you on that as well?
No.
What am I looking at here? I don't. Is it?
Page 66.
I do the HTML one, so I don't have that.
I'm on the HTML one, so it shows up as page 8 of 13. But like, do you have a copy of that? I think you do.
I'm
Yeah.
looking. So is it
Here.
under Appendix A, B, or C?
Appendix A.
Okay.
I think that's a letter from a neighbor, right?
Yeah, it is. I don't know if that is sort of applicable. I don't know how that matters. I don't think I have a foregone conclusion about being here. Like, I don't know, like the stop sign thing. I don't want to bring that up, but I'm just saying. I mean, like, if you think about we're coming here with an idea that we have in our head or a preconceived notion, I'm not trying to say that, hey, I think this is something that's just tailored to me, and I came here with this fight in mind. I just, I just feel that this temporary use makes sense. And if you know the backstory involved here, this is a person that owns a house in town, and they've rented that house out for essentially their business used it for their employees. So they were offering below market rent for people for a long time. That house has been for rent. The idea was, as far as I understand it, is they couldn't afford to live in their own house, and they basically had this house for rent, and they had to live in another area, and or to rent. They couldn't live in the house that they own. So when the time came, the idea was that they would move into that house, but they would need a mortgage helper, as many people do, and they would play by the rules as people do. And those rules are that we can have a short-term rental in our house. That's part of our zoning. But so they've done everything for this community. They've bent over backwards. And now that they're in the community, they're playing by the rules. Someone comes in with this, what I think is an overarching and overreaching rule, to say, oh, look, you gave to the public and you let people stay there in a long-term rental situation. You have to do that forever. And what they've done is renovated their house for themselves and their family, and they can finally afford it. They can finally do this, and this is that piece of the puzzle. And we're making them jump through this temporary use permit, which to me is just kind of like it's a slap on the wrist, because it's this old appendage of this bed and breakfast bylaw with the muffins and all this. And to me, it's like I really look forward to the day when we get affordable housing and we can just kind of eradicate that nonsense out of the zoning. And I'm not sure how that fits in with the letter, but
Well, I just wanted to highlight the letter. I mean that we can debate the merits of the application separately. On that note, as long as I'm talking, I every time someone's come before the council, for almost every time, there were some exceptions where we had people coming in that were just like openly like, oh yeah, we're trying to game the system here. But every time we heard from community members that were in this situation, my heart went out to them. But I can't possibly support this, because it's like my heart goes out to someone who's in this situation, and I have a lot of sympathy. But my heart goes out to long-term renters that get rent evicted. My heart goes out to people who work in this community and don't have a place to rent because they can't find a long-term rental. And so it's really difficult for me to support converting an existing long-term rental into a short-term rental, no matter, like, to put it this way, it has nothing to do with the applicant. There's no argument that could ever convince me that that's something that we should support, is converting long-term rentals into short-term rentals. That's like, and that's an issue that is, I mean, yeah, I don't think I can support it under any circumstances. And this was the point I made when we had the group come in and asked to be grandfathered in. And we've identified time and again the issues that we've got with short-term rentals. Like, for the sake of argument, like in the sort of spirit of compromise, I could maybe be convinced to support like the option B in the application, which is to say, well, let us do it in our home, because I I feel like I could be swayed to do that, but to say, well, we're going to convert a long-term suite that isn't even in our building, that doesn't even meet the current guidelines, it's, I think, okay, well, who were the people that were in there before? They were working here too. Like the proponent themselves they've identified that. They've said everyone that we've had in here as a long-term renter has been a member of the community, that's worked here, that's provided for the community. And those are the people that now we're saying, well, you know what, like, too bad, so sad. It's a
But if you own that property, okay.
No one has been evicted
no
from
but-
this home.
No, but we know that we can assume, based on the information provided, that if we approve the temporary use permit, no one is going to be able to rent it long term for the minimum of those 3 years. And my presumption, based on the information presented in the report, is that if the temporary use permit, or not in the report, in the application, is that if the temporary use permit is not approved, they will continue to rent it out long term rather than leave it empty. So I think that what I understand here is it's like we need money to do our renos, and we can get more money from short-term renters than we can from long-term renters. And
I think option B was to only have the suite as short-term rental, as opposed to alternating back and forth as they do their renovations. I think.
yeah. And so that's what I'm saying. I'm still against it, but I think there's a more compelling argument to be made for having the STR within the house, because at least that actually like fulfills the current rule. But I just see this as exactly what I came on council to fight against, and what every time this issue has come before us, I fought against, is turning potential long-term rentals into short-term rentals. And in some cases, it's an absolutely egregious excuse that a proponent gives us. And in other cases, it's like my heart goes out to them, because I totally feel the struggle, but I feel for the long-term renters too. And I personally cannot vote in favor of this TUP for that reason. I'd vote against it, and I just wanted to give my perspective.
Okay, the report or the letter from the proponent does mention that 3 years ago they missed the deadline to apply to have their suite used. Remember when those bylaw 1310 came in, and we gave everybody, I don't know, what was it, 60 days or something to get their business license if they were kind of in that process already. And this couple didn't live here at the time and didn't know about that deadline, and so didn't apply for it.
I feel really bad about that, but they said it themselves. They missed the deadline.
Councillor Anderson?
Yeah, I think that they were. I mean, you've got an example of people that have bent over backwards to help people with long-term accommodation. No one's been evicted. They just want to do what is lawful for their property, and we've added this bylaw clause that keeps them from doing it. And even if the house changes hands, to me, that's just such overreach. They own the property; they should be allowed to do it. Their neighbors can do it, and like anyone with R1 zoning can do this.
But it's not lawful. Like, what they're asking for is a temporary use permit to make what they want to do lawful, because it's not lawful. If it was lawful, they wouldn't need to be here asking for the TUP. They would just do it.
I think we're going in circles here, but but to be honest, I think the situation is they had a house that they finally could move into, and they have to do it based on to make things work with having a short-term rental. I think they've given their service to the community over a very long period of time, and I think that for them to make it and be an asset to the community, they're like, these are important folks for UCLUET. But for them to make it in this place, they have to do what is available to everybody else. I think there's this small clause in here that is just this old appendage of this STR thing. And I again, this always goes back to the idea of, if you're hungry and you're running out of food, you can start going around and telling everyone what they can do with their food. And you know, how much of yours, can I have some of your food? You give me some of you're not allowed to eat that food. Or you just go out and get some more food. And we build more houses. And that's what we do, and stop telling people what to do with their property.
But that's not what we're here. That's not what we're here to vote on. And I want to touch on one. And this is like the last thing I have to say here. I want to touch on one point you made. I don't think it's my responsibility or council's responsibility to start playing favorites and decide who has done what for UCLUET and make decisions on these issues based on who's bringing them forward. Oh, I like this person, they're really good, and they're a good friend of mine, and they've been really nice, and they run a business that I love, so I'm gonna give this TUP, and that guy dropped in on me surfing, so I'm not gonna
That's not what I meant by that. I meant like the people that would come to this community, like teachers and nurses, people that live. It's very expensive to live in Ucluelet, and for some people to make that work, they need a short-term rental in their building as per the law and the bylaw that we have. Some people need that, and those are the teachers. Those are the people that aren't making tons of money. These are the people that need that, and it just won't pencil out for them to do it with a long-term rental, in which case we'll start to lose those key people that are crucial to the town.
Okay, I'm going to stop the debate right there. This is a temporary use permit application. Councillor Hoare, anything from you?
I think we got a little off topic. Yeah, it's a temporary use permit. In a suite where there's been a short-term rent, or where there's been a long-term rental, so it's not allowed. I've been sort of mulling this one back and forth for the last few days, and I'm sitting on the fence. I don't like the whole house rental thing. That is a problem for me, which the ability to switch back and forth, that would be that option. But
It's not a whole house rental.
no, well, I mean, the upper house and the lower suite, they're looking to be able to do both instead of
Alternate.
alternating.
As
No,
they-
I
as they
appreciate
renovate,
that
yeah.
as they renovate. Yeah, no, I've just been tossing it back and forth in my mind because I have a thing about the whole house rental problem. So, yeah, I'm not really.
Any further comments, Mr. Gregg?
Through the mayor, obviously some good debate on some pertinent issues facing housing and tourist accommodation in the town. My only comment would really be just a reminder that it's a good process to give the applicant an opportunity to speak if they wish, and as well to make sure that we remember to allow the public to give input before making a decision on a permit.
Okay, that's not part of my script, but sure, let's do that. Would the applicant like to speak? That's okay. You have to go to the microphone, though, because people are watching on Zoom. You have to speak at the microphone, yeah. And just give your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Isla Klein Simpson. We live at 1054 Helen Road.
And just anything that you would like to tell us.
So much. I'll keep it brief. Hi, Councillor Mafferty. Just to address one of your initial points about Lindsay Black's email being included in the appendix. I think that's when you were referencing Councillor Anderson was CC'd on an email. We wanted to let all our neighbors know what was happening and what we were asking for. And so we got everybody's information that we could. I think there's one, this is on High Focus Island to give you context. There's one new build and one neighbor that we didn't have. Other than that, we emailed everybody. This was when we knew it was going to go out to the district via public notification. That's why these people are included. There had been a previous kind of neighborly emails regarding the end of High Focus development. That's how I had these people's emails or went to talk to them in person.
I don't think you
Yeah.
did anything wrong, and I don't think Sean did anything wrong. I'm just wondering what happens if any counselor votes on an issue that they've already publicly taken a stand on. But that's not your fault, and that's nothing that, like I said, I don't think anyone's done anything wrong at this point. Certainly not you. So there's no criticism
Okay.
or like I don't think you did anything wrong at all.
Okay. Wow. I thought I couldn't speak at council meetings, so I wish I prepared. I understand why you don't want a precedent set by something that goes against district bylaw. We applied. I think this has been a bit of a game of telephone. I'm the one that wrote the application. It goes to the council. We initially applied for a simple business license, got denied because there is a kitchen in our basement suite. So it's considered a secondary suite. The house wasn't built with an interior stairway, et cetera, et cetera. So because it's on the district plans, we were denied based on that it was a secondary suite. When we moved back here in September for my partner's job, we had tenants that had, prior to us even know we were moving back, signed a fixed contract in the upstairs unit of our home. Upstairs unit, 3 bedrooms, downstairs 2 bedrooms, separate suites. Since we moved here in September for his work, we had lived in the downstairs of our suite with a family, daughter, dog, pets, in 2 bedrooms, just to like honor the contract that our tenants had upstairs. Our initial application was going to be, we were going to move upstairs. Our initial application was we live upstairs. We asked for this temporary use permit downstairs. When district staff had a meeting that we rejected from the regular business license channel because of it being on paper illegal.
Just try and speak into the microphone,
sorry.
please. Thanks.
Whoa. When we were rejected on the as per the bylaws, we were always just going to go for a temporary use permit in the bottom. We were going to live upstairs with our family, and it was kind of just in a district meeting that somebody in the district said, hey, if you're going to go for this temporary use permit anyway, in a temporary use permit, you can kind of ask for whatever you want. So if for the next 3 years you guys can see yourself living downstairs, and you get the temporary use permit for upstairs, like why not ask for both? We don't intend on moving our family up and down and up and down. That I just want to be clear because I feel like that got a little bit away. But I understand, I understand the points of your discussion and the precedent setting and the need for long-term housing. I don't know if there's any other questions for me, except for the fact that, I know that we provided 7 years of long-term housing. Everybody moved out on their own terms. And we missed the memo because we weren't living here about that bylaw change. I'm sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head. We missed that memo. We would have applied, but it would also have been a bit tricky because in 2016, the provincial government and the residential tenancy branch changed it that you couldn't end a tenancy as a landlord if you weren't moving in. And we weren't moving in because we didn't have jobs here. So while we could have applied had we known a few years ago, I'm sorry, I can't remember the date, we would have. But how would we have displaced a long-term tenancy that wasn't naturally coming to an end? And by naturally ending, I mean the tenant gives notice, or as per the Residential Tenancy Branch Act, if there's multiple tenants on a fixed tenancy, if one chooses to move out, the tenancy ends at the end of the term. So we also wanted to honor all the tenants that we had. And I will speak to the fact that I understand you don't want a precedent set. The majority of our neighbors all run legal short-term rentals, whether that's different zoning or literally having your house being constructed in a different way, like an open staircase, and the rooms are designed differently. And we've really done our best to provide really good housing. I would say we have 14 tenant years, and to have supplied housing for businesses that make money off of tourism and don't supply their own housing has been challenging. So, thanks.
No, I hear that.
Any questions for the proponent from
Yeah.
from council?
Do you have tenants right now?
No, we're waiting for your decision.
Councillor Anderson? No, you're okay?
I'm okay.
All right, thank you for speaking.
Just a quick question.
Oh,
So you
Councillor
have
Moore.
renovations, I mean, it was laid out about the renovations that need to happen in the upper part, but you also have renovations you want to do to the lower part as well that you're currently in? Is that?
Overarchingly, there seems to be this focus on renovations. Our house, by virtue of how it was built, original design, the ocean air that eats everything. I don't know if you've had a chance to read the whole application or any backstory. There's just, I'm not going to say renovation sounds like I'm choosing to paint a kitchen. I'm talking about like necessary structural things to all areas, whether it's been interior leaks, siding, doors not opening and working, stuff like that. So there are projects for both spaces.
That's what I was just clarifying, was because
Yes.
the application spoke to the ones for upstairs. So I was just verifying that they were also
Yes, there's
similar
everywhere.
sorts of projects, shall we say, that
Yes.
are
For
also
example, no
downstairs.
functioning heating system. Nobody in town can repair it. All over the house, as an example. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for explaining that. You can sit down. Sure.
I have a one quick one. Sorry. I know that well, you're my neighbor, so I know that as you're someone from your household is a critical position in town, and I think it's important to say, like, when we look at that, when we're talking about precedent setting, a TUP is a case-by-case basis. So we were going to see each one of these come before us. It's not like if we do this, everyone gets one. This is we have to keep in mind, this is a case-by-case basis, and I think it's important, because I think and I don't want to get into the weeds here, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's financially it's a pretty critical thing for you guys to have that short term.
Yeah, we wouldn't have applied if it wasn't.
Right.
Also, speaking to your point about my partner working for the district, that was something we put his name in because he's also an applicant, as the owner of the home. But we, like, on purpose, did not put his role or anything in this, because we didn't want to, I don't know what the expression is, we didn't want to pull on those types of strings for this.
For favoritism.
This is a personal story. This isn't who got what job.
This is people that want to be able to live in their own home, and this is how this works, and this is important members of the community, in my opinion. So thank you for answering that question.
Now you can sit down. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak to this temporary use permit? I see no one in the audience. Do I need to ask if there's anyone on Zoom that needs to speak? Ms. Owen?
If anyone on Zoom wish to speak, please raise your hand. No hands are raised at this time.
Has anyone called in?
We have no one called in at this time.
And has anyone emailed?
We have a raised hand.
This is on Zoom?
This is on Zoom. Todd and Sarah, you should be able to unmute.
Oh, am I on now and allowed to speak?
Yes, we can hear you. Just your name and address, please.
Todd Evelina, and I can provide my address. Y'all have seen me in council before. I see Sean holding his head in regret that I'm speaking, so I'll say this aloud. I think I'd agree with Mark here. There's a precedent where we should actually ask for UBCM rules to apply and folks to self-identify as conflict of interest. I know the applicant, and I understand the hardship of families in this position, but the topic of short-term rentals versus long-term housing is so heated, and it's phrased here as an applicant who's moving from one floor to another. But I agree with Mark wholeheartedly in the expression there is the precedent for whether one person in town is valued more than another is a very shaky foundation to make decisions on. And in similar instances where high focus land was up and councillors did not self-identify and step back, I think there's something about this decision where we need to honor that and have some accountability. And I'm sorry that I have to label that in such a way, but I see this happening, and it's hard to sit back and not say something. And I feel for the applicant. I truly do, because I've known them and seen them in parenthood groups. And I just encourage council to make a decision on this one based on some of the discussion that has happened and the rules that are in place. So that's all I have to say today.
Thanks, Todd, for your comments. This is, just to be clear, this is not precedent setting. This is a temporary use permit, and they are looked at on a case-by-case basis. So this is not setting a precedent. Anyone else? Has anyone emailed in, Ms. Owen?
No emails have come in regarding this matter that haven't already been included in the package.
Okay, we do have some neighbors that have given support via email in this package. All right, there is a recommendation. I will move it and see where the discussion goes. I'll move that council authorize the Director of Community Planning to issue temporary use permit 25-01 to allow one vacation rental unit at 1054 Helen Road for a period of 3 years. Do I have a seconder?
Second.
Councillor Mafty seconds. Further discussion?
I'll pipe up quickly. I can't support this. I can't vote in favor of it. I'm going to abstain, with the caveat that my understanding is that an abstention counts not against the application. So I can't support it, but it's really, really difficult to vote against it. And so I'm going to abstain for that reason.
Thank you. So Councillor Mafty seconded. Any other discussion? Any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. We have 2 people abstaining.
Yeah, but sorry, Mayor. So an abstention or denial is against. So it does not support if you abstain or you vote against or don't put your hand up. So just a technical point, like you need a majority in favor of it.
I don't know if that's
I thought
true.
that was the other way around.
I think you're,
Specifically asked
I think you're in error.
the mayor
Yeah,
about that.
I was sure it meant, because there's lots of times when
We
nobody
got the
puts
guy.
their
We got the guy.
nobody puts their hand up,
All hands on deck.
and it's considered in favor.
I'm just going to refer to our brand new
Brand spanking new.
manager of corporate services just to verify.
This was me sitting on the fence, partly because I was thinking about it as just in the secondary suite, just using the downstairs space. That's, I sort of can get around that a little bit easier than I can the back and forth part.
Yeah.
Call the vote again.
Yeah. Yes, they're currently in the downstairs. Could I know.
Your Worship, as councillor, I just quick check on the community charter. It said if a council member does not indicate how he or she votes, the member is deemed to have voted in the affirmative.
Thank you. That's what I thought.
My apologies.
No problem, Mr. Lawrence. It's always good to check up on these things.
It's a nail biter.
Okay, so there were 2 in favor, 2 abstained, so motion carries. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Sorry to put you through all that. Okay. Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none, there are 5 correspondence items. The first one is correspondence related to Madison Reservoir Housing Development post. There seems to be some confusion, and I would like to clear that up. More than one person queried whether, because I guess on our website that lot of land is labeled as Big Beach Park, and so it's my understanding that it's district-owned land, but it's not designated parkland. Mr. Gregg?
Mayor McKim, your understanding is correct. We have parks that are dedicated as park, but we also have land that we operate as park, but that are not dedicated. And so that that label on Yuki maps is a little, maybe, I think was probably put there so that people who are hovering over or looking at Big Beach Park would, have some reference. But it's tied to the hilltop. Basically, if you'll bear with me for a little bit of the history of it, is a much larger piece of property, which was owned by the district, includes this site. It started, they subdivided off, Short Road and the Ocean Park Villa, and then Victoria Road and part of Marine Drive, and the whole subdivision that was Sunset Point, including Lot 16 and, the property down. And Big Beach is a remainder, and as is the top of the hill. That's the weird definition of that parcel, is those two chunks linked, never dedicated as park. So it is a different beast than parkland that was dedicated as park for that purpose at a point in time, such as Tugwell Field and the dog park. So they are legally two different things. So as part of the process that had been laid out in the staff reports with the school district and whatnot, redefining that, there would be a subdivision. And at that point, certainly council, if it wished, it may make some sense to, at that time, register Big Beach as dedicated as park, which may be appropriate, because I don't think there's any intention for that to be used in any other way. But it would not trigger that whole alternative approval or approval of the electors for the water tower site itself.
Thank you. That was my understanding, but some people are obviously confused about that.
Clearly, I can understand how it could be. And that label on Yuki maps, and that's something that is not official, and certainly we'll look at having the GIS folks perhaps fix that.
Great. That would be wonderful. Thank you. 9.2 is a letter from Seaview Seniors Housing Society requesting benches, and Ms. Fortune is not here, but Mr. Lawrence, perhaps you could speak to this?
Absolutely, Your Worship. So this letter has been referred back out to Ms. Fortune. She has since reached out to Forest Glen, and they're in discussions about where a potential bench could go along that stretch. So she'll be working on that and advising the interested parties as to what the process would be and if they can get a bench in there.
Wonderful, thank you. And would that be RMI money, Mr. Lawrence? Or what budget would that come out of? Just parks?
So there would be a couple of different ways to do it. One is if it's a memorial bench or dedication bench, that would be at the cost of whoever's sponsoring the bench. There is periodically monies allocated to install benches throughout the community. As far as I know, at this point in time, we don't have dedicated funds for bench installations in this area in the current budget for this fiscal year, but maybe a future year if that was desirable. And then there is an opportunity to also use RMI money for bench and furniture and stuff like that, but it has to be through that process of approving through the province.
The RDS?
That's correct.
Right.
Can I ask you a question?
Councillor Anderson?
How much does a bench cost?
The bench to purchase about $1,500 to $1,800 now, and then about $1,000 to install.
How many benches do you know that CV is looking for? I don't know if it mentions it in the.
I do not know how many benches
It
they're
doesn't
looking
mention
for.
it. I think they're
yeah.
just talking about having benches in a general way to, you know, as a spot that people can pause around town.
Yeah.
There is best practice for bench installation and resting spots, and you know, that'll come into the sort of equation of where's the best location, because there's multiple aspects to it. It's like, is there available space? Is it safe to put a bench? Is it in the right location? And what's the appropriate distance from a seniors development to wherever the destination is? I think memory serve, it's about 400 meters or something like that as good spacing for practice. So there's design work that goes into identifying appropriate locations.
As a first step, can we direct staff to look into corresponding with Seaview and find out how many benches they want and where, and then try and figure that out and do a report?
They're using the plural benches
Right.
and recognizing that others would appreciate them as well, like parents walking with toddlers and tourists strolling through town. So they are, I think, hoping for multiple benches.
Right.
But I think Miss Fortune is in touch with them about that. Mr. Lawrence?
Yes, council made I believe, a resolution. We'd have to check the resolution tracker, but staff are in discussions with them right now. So we'll move this forward.
Great, thank you. Councillor Hoare?
I was just going to comment that the one bench, which is the log bench that's across from the brewery, is in constant use on nice days. And, you know, I'll just state this as someone who's at the co-op many days, that a bench there would probably be not a bad idea. There are spots along the Peninsula Road where I feel benches would be appropriate, the bus stops, for instance. I do know that with the Wild Pacific Trail Society, they earmark about $3,000 per bench for the bench and installation. So,
Yeah, I was going to suggest that the Wild Pacific Trail Society has lots of experience installing
Yes.
benches.
they know about benches.
They do, yeah.
But
Okay, so we'll leave it in staff's capable hands then. This next one, Ucluelet Harbor Foreshore Leasing. This is, I know this is out of our jurisdiction. This is from Ministry of Water, Land, and Resource. Oh, hard to read. Stewardship. Ministry of Water, Land, and Resource Stewardship. So Neptune Ice is their foreshore is going up from $13,000 a year to $64,000 a year. That's like, is there anything we can do to inquire about that?
Thank you, Mayor. Absolutely. So staff can write to the ministry, or council can, or the mayor's office can write to the ministry asking for additional information or advocating for a consideration of maybe a longer period of time and some adequate notification for businesses in our community. This can have quite a significant impact, especially if it's dropped on you with what appears to be very limited notice.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, absolutely. There's we can reach out to the ministry and find out, hey, what's going on, and then advocate for some considerations. Staff can work with your worship on a letter, and we can also reach out to them to find out more information on why this is occurring at this particular time.
Okay, do you need a motion for that?
Only if the mayor wants to undertake a specific action. Staff can reach out to the ministry with this conversation and find out some more details, and then obviously we can also inquire and present a letter at a future date if necessary.
Okay, we'll leave it in your hands then. Thank you. I wasn't sure if there was anything we could do, but I was hoping.
I was made aware of this quite early on when they got the information, and I felt that if we could advocate for them, because that is a pretty egregious increase to see.
And so suddenly as well.
And who? So the lease goes to. Sorry, it's with
It's the Ministry of Water, Land, and Resource Stewardship.
So they raised that price without any warning. Is it based on anything? Like, is there any backstory on why they've done this?
They have informed her it goes by property value of the uplands,
So the parking lot.
the parking lot,
Yeah.
and the dock, and then times 8% if the small lot, and then 8%. Like, there's just no period there.
And Neptune has informed us, but I would assume that the other foreshore leases along there are going to have similar.
I'm guessing this is the first that's come to our
And
attention.
since Larson's recently changed ownership, I mean, there may be a little bit of, we may not have heard from everybody for that reason. So
This could be pretty important, and obviously this is unbelievably important. I think it's we have to be part of the appeal process for them. I think.
I would agree. I think it's pretty important, and I would say that I think the first step is to get staff to inquire. But I notice in the letter that they send that it says this letter is to request the following within 60 days of receiving the letter. If you need additional time, please call. So if Crystal or anyone else is listening, I'd say call and ask for an extension. And I think that we need to work together to appeal to this ministry and to this Jamie Berry portfolio administrator, because this could have absolutely major impacts on the community, and it's going to boil down to like a couple $100,000 for them. And I think we need to make it really clear what the consequences are, as council and as the community. And so if anyone else is out there that is affected, I would urge them to reach out. I don't know if like a petition's in order, but at least if everyone's on the same page, that we can work together to try to address this. And in the meantime, to call that number and ask for an extension, and maybe even cite the fact that the council is looking at options as a justification for the extension.
Yeah, we need to definitely put our hand up and say this is what's going on.
Well said.
Mr. Lawrence?
Just one other thing. So the one other aspect that we can undertake is to reach out to Minister Osborne, our local MLA. I would be surprised if she would be very interested in this, especially because it would have implications for a significant portion of her constituents, not only here, because if they're increasing the rates here, they're probably doing it in Tofino, they're probably doing it in Port Alberni, and then the rest of the areas within her jurisdiction. So reaching out to Minister Osborne would be also probably advisable.
Yes, and I definitely would sign a letter to her for sure, and maybe even our MP Gord Johns.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think this one's federal. So
No, it's provincial.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
never hurts to bang on all the doors.
That's right.
You're here.
And then there is 9.5, open letter to Premier Eby and Minister Chandra Herbert. This is to do with that grant, BC Festivals and Fairs and Events grant. And I would be willing to support forwarding a copy of this letter to them as well, as this looks like it's from an events company, but several municipalities have gotten on board with this momentum to ask the provincial government to keep this grant alive, or at least some version of this grant, BC Festivals, Fairs and Events. I know the Whale Festival applied for it 2 years in a row and was successful, and the province is just sort of cutting it right out. So
Yeah, there are a lot of very good events that have received funding from this
absolutely,
grant
yeah.
system in the past, and be nice to see something for them.
Yes, so I would be in support of a forwarding, and they have a draft letter here for our use. Would that be something that would require a motion, Mr. Lawrence?
Yes, it would.
Okay. So I will move that the District of Ucluelet forward the letter to Premier Eby and Minister Chandra Herbert, that's the Ministry of Tourism, to support the ongoing grant called the BCFFE, BC Fairs, Festivals, Events Grant. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Councillor Anderson seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? None opposed. That carries. There are 3 information items. The first item is a water treatment plant update presented by our Director of Engineering, Mr. McIntosh.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just waiting for a slide to populate. So while that's coming up, I'd just like to share with you, Mayor and Council, an update on the water treatment plant. I'm pleased to share that we are on track right now with design progression, schedule, and costs. Oh, sorry, not that far. Thank you. So in recent months, the project has made significant gains. So the entire project team, and just want to nod my hat to McLean Engineering, who's been working long, hard hours to get us to where we are. So the design is currently at 60% status and on track for completion in the spring of 2026. It's at a stage now where I can share it with you visually. So the preliminary design at 60% is appended to your council report. And I'd also like to share this with you. So the design here, this is the preliminary design and illustration of it. It's a 25-meter building that works in conjunction with our existing plant. So the pumps will pump water out of our existing plant and into the new treatment facility. The new treatment facility has 6 large canisters of media inside of it that coagulate and act with chlorine to remove all the iron, manganese, and also harmful microbacteria. So that is our design. And here it is. So there's that 25-meter facility working in conjunction with our existing facility. Plenty of room to park, etc. There are our canisters that treat the water.
Sand filtration.
Sand filtration,
Yeah.
that's right. Okay, thank you. We'll just go to the next slide, please. Okay, so for that design, that preliminary design at 60%, a cost estimate has been completed. And it will cost roughly $9 million to build. And the total project is within the budget of $13 million. And a Class C estimate is included, appended to your report, Council. Next slide, please. Is that it? Okay, thanks. Well, that's fine. That works. So that Class C estimate is appended to your report, Council. Ms. Owens, maybe we'll just, I'll go without. That's okay. And then as well, the project schedule is also appended to your report, Council. As I shared, it's on track right now to be completed by March 31st, 2026. The schedule remains rigorous. We had some delays at inception and the beginning. And so with a rigorous schedule, we are implementing a procurement strategy to purchase long lead items upfront. So normally, capital purchases happen generally through a general contractor, and we are bringing some of those items forward. So those 2 items that have been earmarked for long delivery times are the facility itself, so the prefabricated structure, and also the media filter package. So that's the canisters, the media, blowers, etc. So just last month, we published a request for proposals for those 2 packages of equipment. And those are just wrapping up now. We are anticipating to have them complete by now, but offered an extension to have a more diverse response in our procurement. So council, that'll be presented to you in March 25th, and a request for authorization to purchase the facility and also the media equipment. So that's actually it. I just wanted to give you an update to share where we are with design. It's looking good. Cost, it's on track, and schedule, we're looking like we're ready to be completed, if all goes well, in the spring of 2026. There is a quick item here about tariffs and the implication that could be affecting this project. Of course, it's a big now sort of known unknown, I'll call it, a risk that we are aware could be happening. And how we're dealing with that in the procurement strategy is to be very clear with contractors to not inflate their prices prematurely, arbitrarily, or indirectly in their contract pricing. So if there is tariffs that the contractors are concerned about, to put those upfront in their contract as a sort of clear cost that the municipality will have to pay for. So as we go through these procurements, it'll be very clear contractually that those tariffs are included in our contract or are not included. So there's a few other little strategies that we have in the procurement strategy realm domain to try to manage those, but council, as you can manage, it's coming at us quickly, and we're implementing procedures to try to mitigate those uncertainties. I'll leave it there. Do you have any questions for me, council?
Thank you, Mr. McIntosh. I see that you are at a stage where you're engaging with Island Health for the design review.
That's right.
And so what exactly are they looking for?
Yeah, so they provide our permit to construct the waterworks. And so what Island Health is doing is a review of our entire engineered water treatment plant system, and they're looking to see that it meets requirement provided by the province. And so we've had our first initial conversation with Island Health, and that's been quite successful and encouraging. And so the design as it currently is in that preliminary 60% design looks like it'll nicely move through the rest of the design and approval processes from Island Health. So to summarize, it's a design that they're very familiar with, have seen a lot of times, and there's nothing unusual happening. So it should go fairly quick.
And so by March of next year, there'll be no iron or manganese in our water?
Yep, that's right. That's right.
That'll be a day to look forward to. Yes. My only other question was that you had a question whether it would require a level 2 or a level 3 operator.
Yes, so part of the design process, we currently have a level 2 treatment facility. Who regulates that is the Environmental Operation Control Certification Program, EOCP. And so when we are through our design, historically what they do is they rate the facility and then sort of through that prescribe the operator's competency to operate that facility. So we're applying right now, going through a bit of a toolkit to get an early understanding from the EOCP of what that classification could be for the facility and then the operator to follow. And so I don't quite have that answer yet, but we are applying that tool now, and we'll probably know in the next couple of months.
And do we have a level 3 operator at the moment?
We do not. We do not. That's a great question. And so we're working through some strategies to, as I've shared on the report, we are considering how are we going to operate this facility with our current classification? And is it bringing a current operator up to that status? Is it having a bit of some leeway from the OCP to have a training period where we have some lenience for a year, where we're certifying and training an operator to get to that level? or sort of worst case scenario, do we have to bring someone in from outside to operate the plant while we're getting trained up? All things I look forward to answering in the month or two ahead.
Great, thank you. Any questions from council?
That's good.
Oh, Councillor Hoare?
Do we know if there's a level 3 operator? Like, do any of the nations or anybody nearby have a level 3 around that could potentially train up one of our peeps or something?
Through the mayor, there isn't any that I'm aware of within close proximity, say 100 kilometers that I'm aware of. There is a consultant that we've brought in to work with the community in 2021 from the other side of the island, and so there are folks around that are highly trained through the EOCP and have that level 3 classification that we might look to leveraging their experience and working with Island Health to get us through this sort of operational training dilemma that's could be facing us.
But we won't know until everything comes down. Other question, that particular site in wet years, floods, are they going to be building it up a bit, or is that going to be a concern?
Through the mayor, so the placement of the plant is specific to the flood mapping that's occurred there, and so the whole site has received a sort of a hydrological overland runoff flooding cut fill kind of operation to determine where the plant should best go. And so you'll see it's in actually a little bit of an awkward position, but it looks sort of natural now. It's just at the top of that road. So it's the highest point on the site to not be flooded. So the existing plant is at a lower elevation actually than the new plant. And there's been stories of water coming right up to the edge of the existing plant. So we're aware of it. It's been considered thoroughly and it's incorporated into the design.
I thought so, but I figured I should say something.
Councillor Anderson?
Looking at the cost estimate page there, do you have any inkling of what's on this page that might be affected by tariffs? And I know that's a difficult question because if you're talking about the holding tanks and things, it could be from a company that purchases their steel in the States. But do you have any kind of, when you're looking at these numbers, are you thinking, oh, there's a couple of things on here that are definitely coming from the U.S. versus things that are just coming within Canada?
Through the mayor, it's really good intuitive question. So what's happening right now in the background is part of the strategy is just that exact identification, is a line by line review of where specific items are coming from. And so an output of that will be sort of a indice of items that are at threat of tariff overages. And so while I'll share that isn't available for council right now, it's in process. We are receiving our first procurement figures right now. And so the building has just recently closed, and then the plant, the filter material closes this week as well. And so early indication of those figures coming in are that they're actually under budget from what you have in your schedule there. And so there's a good indication that so far we're doing well, but we're certainly not through it yet by any means. I will share. Sorry, we do have a 25% contingency in this program, and so if this definitely is not ideal in capital projects, but if needed, there is a 1-to-1 relationship between our 25% contingency and a 25% tariff. So we don't want to use it in that way. The contingency is meant to sort of solve risks that we weren't planning for, but it is there for use if needed.
Thank you for that.
If there's no other questions for staff, thank you very much for your update, Mr. McIntosh.
Thank you.
The next item is Fire and Emergency Services 2024 Annual Summary and is presented by the Fire Chief. Chief Geddes.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and Council. Thanks for allowing me to present the 2024 year in review. Just wait for Ms. Owen there to get her going.
it was a really interesting read, I have to tell you.
I hope by interesting you mean in a good way?
In a good way.
Okay, good.
Definitely in a good way.
Thanks. That was the intent. And I thought rather than just read off the report, I sorted up a bit of a PowerPoint in chronological order with the lines with the report, and we'll just sort of go through there. So we'll see if this works. There we go. So 2024 was the 75th anniversary of the fire department. So we did have a bit of a celebration there in summer, and thanks to mayor and councillors that showed up, and the mayor did us the honor of cutting the cake. Just a reminder of our mission and values of the fire department. So our mission statement is to make a positive impact on the lives of those we serve. We did quite an extensive exercise on this a couple of years ago because we didn't have this in place, and that's what the team decided on. You know, the bottom line is why do we do what we do, and what's our end goal? We can't necessarily save everybody's house, but in the end, if we made a positive impact, then that's what we're about. So, core values include safety, reliability, compassion, respect, competence, and resilience. And there's just a little graphic of our call volume. You can see it's down marginally this year over last year. The big dip in 2020 was again due to COVID and government advice for fire departments to stop until we had more information on COVID, to stop attending medical calls. So a significant dip in 2020. And then, a gradual trend upward, which is not uncommon in our line of business these days. On your written report, you have actual numbers of calls attended, and I broke it down this way on this slide in percentage just so you can see. So overall, 56% of our calls are made up between motor vehicle incidents and medical calls. And again, that's probably a very average number for fire departments. And the rest is sort of dispersed amongst all the other types of calls that we do. So we attended 51 calls outside of the municipality. Most of these were road rescue calls. Responded to 4 structure fires in Tofino. None of them were significant. So what I mean by that is that we weren't required, for the most part. We were stood down on all of those calls. So a structure fire can come in as a side of a building's on fire, not necessarily a fully engulfed house, such as we see in the picture here. So that it's a very broad definition. So we weren't required on any of the 4 structure fires in Tofino. And then, of course, we had one significant structure fire within town here, which resulted in the major loss of home, which they're trying to rebuild at this point. And just a recap of the service we provide on the highway. So once we're out of the municipal boundaries, we're actually working for the province, and we are reimbursed through the Ministry of Emergency Management and Climate Readiness. Last year, we billed back approximately $14,000 to the provincial government for that service, and that goes into the fire department's facility, vehicles, and equipment reserve fund account. That number is kind of on average since I've been here. It's sort of average between $12,000 and $14,000 a year is generated in funds. Along the lines of those funds too, when we go outside the municipality, if we damage any equipment on those calls as well, we bill that back. So there is the district makes a fair amount of money on those types of calls. And we have service agreements in place, of course, with the ECRD, District of Tofino, the federal government with Parks Canada, Toquat Nation, and Ucluelet, of course. And we're constantly working on updating those agreements, which is a work in progress for all of them. The one with the Parks Canada is particularly antiquated. Again, still working on the one with the ECRD, hoping to get that one sewed up this year. A big part of what we do with our First Nations agreements is provide support in other ways. And this year I came across a grant that assisted Toquat Nation and was 100% funding for this firefighting skid. It's now located in the village of Makoa, so it significantly increases their capacity. It was through a funding that I discovered at the Fire Chiefs Conference last year and put in an application. And lo and behold, they said, yeah, that seems like a great cause for this. And they're 100% donated by this company, Global Manic. And right across Canada, they've actually given out hundreds of these. So I figured it was a good way to provide them some protection over there with minimal investment. Regarding capital purchases, as you know, we were approved last year to replace our 30-year-old breathing apparatus, and there's some of the bottles and packs laid out. Feedback has been great on the new gear. Yeah, the members are really enjoying them. It's night and day as far as comfort and firefighter safety as well, being that the bottles now hold twice as much air as they used to. Through a UBCM grant, we also received 8 new sets of firefighter turnout gear worth approximately $30,000. And that's helping to support the cancer prevention program that I established when we were here. And the end goal is trying to get every firefighter 2 sets of gear, which is common in the fire service now. Some of the capital purchases were some safety and comfort improvements made to the fire hall. So the biggest safety improvement, of course, was the addition of the exterior stairs. We now have 1 of our 2 sets of stairs that actually meets minimum code, which is great. So it's 1 more than we had, so we do appreciate that. And of course, the installation of a heat pump has made it bearable in the summer and in the winter. Although it's chilly in my office and hot in my office still, but it's about the big room upstairs is there's no comparison to how it was before. So that was money well spent for the team. And again, through UBCM grant last year, we replaced the tsunami warning speaker at the Cedar Road, 100% funded through that grant. We've applied again this year to replace the other speaker at Amphitrite Point. Still waiting to hear a decision on that. And my assumption is that because we were successful last year, unless the grant is oversubscribed, that we would be successful again this year. The caveat again, the one I just had this conversation with the supplier, is the tariffs. The price at the time, there was no, tariffs weren't really on the horizon. So still confirming if the price is still a price or if there will be additional fees on that. And if so, if there are additional fees attached, then we'll, before purchasing that, we will definitely weigh, is it worth it at that point. So. Last year in training, the fire department dedicated 2,900 hours, person hours to training, and that's just the training that we recorded. We try and keep real good tabs on it, but a lot of it is home training, homework that we give the firefighters, online courses. So that's the equivalent of 121 full days of training. So that's a pretty big chunk of people's time. By the end of the year, we were in an unprecedented position in which every single firefighter, other than the recruits that started last year, were fully certified to the NFPA 1001 Firefighter 2 standard, which I'm pretty proud of. That was a pretty big goal to hit. And now we've got 9 that aren't certified because of the 5 that started last year, and we just had 4 more recruits. But to have the rest of our senior firefighters trained at that level is a pretty good accomplishment. So we're pretty proud of that one. The next few slides are just some pictures of some of the training activities we do. It's not just classroom stuff. In fact, it's a lot of hands-on things that are relevant to our community. So on the left there, you can see doing some rescue technique practice at the skateboard park. On the right is roof practice. And without a proper training facility, we have to be creative in how we can properly train and evaluate our firefighters. So this is a roof prop made by our firefighters that we can safely train on. And as far as roof ventilation and just climbing roofs and getting comfortable on roofs, because a lot of people have never been on roofs. And as a firefighter, you expect we can all go up ladders and do those types of things. So you throw in a chainsaw on top of that, and now you got to fire up this chainsaw, and it adds a whole nother dimension. So. We do things on Tuesday night. Part of our training is as simple as going over to school and playing basketball. In fact, that same night there was a bunch of kids playing soccer that the crew challenged to a little soccer game in full turnout gear, and it was great for the kids to get to interact with the firefighters and see that even though they're wearing all this scary gear, that they're there to help and we're part of the community. And it was a really good workout for the team as well. So. And then on the right, some of our core skills that we work on, of course, on the trail. That's a trail rescue training scenario that we do quite regularly. On the left, Small Craft Harbor. Again, we train on that every quarter. We go down there, and now 52 Steps has been retrofitted as well, and it has a similar standpipe system, so we'll be able to provide better protection down there, the same level of protection that we can provide at the other harbors. So we do that regularly. In fact, our crew will most likely be down at 52 Steps tomorrow night doing some training. On the right there, that's the crew doing some in-house training, which I'm able to provide as an instructor evaluator. So that was doing the Narcan intramuscular injection training a while back. These ones here, this is how we spend our weekends. So the left and the middle, those are at the Comox Fire Training Center, where we often send our firefighters to finish the certification program. On the left is in the Live Fire 2 program, and a couple of our firefighters, Firefighter Green, you can see he's at the back there, and up on the nozzle, I believe, is Firefighter Ploon. Coming up the second story window in the middle there, that's Firefighter Lounsbury, and that's part of the survival training and rescue techniques, which is a great self-rescue course that we try and get everybody through at Comox. And then on the right, we brought an subject matter expert in near the end of the year to go over some road rescue techniques and to make sure everybody's familiar with every single tool in there, and just to really build confidence, because we don't get to break things down to that level of training very often. So we continue to train regularly with our partners up the road in Tofino. So the top picture, of course, is at the airport, where we often meet. It's very central for both of us, and there's a good water supply there. So we often will practice drafting water out of the pool in the middle and then pump it right back in there, so we get to reuse the water. And then the bottom one is a MCA, multi-casualty incident training exercise in Tofino last year, a simulated bus accident. Regarding EOC and the emergency program, in September we hosted a Justice Institute BC community evacuations course. Again, that was through a grant that I applied for, so that was 100% funded. It was a regional event, so we put 22 people through the course, people from District of Equillet, Tofino, City of Port Alberni, Ministry of Transportation, Toquat Nation, ACRD, Suchat, and BCHS. Again, I've applied for that same funding this year, still waiting to hear if we're successful or not. But it's a great way to bring some great training to town and to spend a day of networking with our other agencies that we be working on these regional emergencies. Our emergency support services team continues to meet and train regularly. We've just had some new additions to that team, which is great. There's 2 new people that were relatively new to town and actually new to the country that have recently joined, which is great news because our team hasn't expanded for some time. So that's great. We had 1 activation of the team this year, and that was for a structure fire. And some of the ongoing training that we continue every Tuesday night, of course, we're doing an assortment of things now that we have people at different stages of training. Just started in a recruit class last week. And so they're just literally getting their gear tomorrow night. The other crew is entirely finished the training, so they're doing skills maintenance and working on higher levels of training. And then we've got our middle crew that started last year that's almost halfway through the certification program. We recently did some apparatus pump operator training, again, brought in a subject matter expert from Saanich Fire Department. And I can teach you how to get water out of a pump, but to really learn the ins and outs, you bring somebody in like that, and it was money well spent. So the team really got a lot out of that. So now building on those skills. And then an assortment of other continuing education that we're constantly doing. Fire prevention world, we completed 127 fire safety inspections last year, which is the most ever we've done. We're still trying to figure out exactly how many inspectable properties we have in town, and we'll never really know until, because it's fluid, it's always changing. But a goal that I'd set with Deputy Chief McCurry was to get all our commercial kitchens inspected at least. Commercial kitchens are the highest risk potential for fire and loss of life in our world, in North America. So not necessarily here in town, but you can imagine we were greeted a lot of times when we went to some of these businesses that have been here for 20 years, said, well, we've never had an inspection. Why do we have to have one now? So it was a lot about relationship building with the businesses and letting them understand that we're not there to shut them down or write them tickets. We're there to make sure it's safe for everybody to work and to visit. So that's been a successful program. And it's time to get back and to those restaurants again before we hit the busy season here again. pretty much every restaurant had something wrong, and that's normal. Whether it's an extinguisher that's not mounted or in the wrong place, but a lot of things we found were easily corrected. And but there's probably not one business in town that got a perfect passing grade on first glance. But that's normal. There's always going to be things. There's again our recruit class from last year. So 5 great people that are about halfway through the program now. They've each bring a great skill set and different levels of life experience and training levels, and they're deeply immersed in their training right now. In fact, they're getting ready to go to live fire training a couple weeks in April. With the fire department, we're, and not just us, fire departments in general, are typically function as charitable organizations as well. We're an expensive insurance policy. That's how we're referred to. We cost a lot of money. 99 times out of 100, we're sitting there, we're not moving. And but there are ways we can give back. And this year, the Firefighter Association was very involved in giving back, and we sponsored the association sponsored a local youth, Sarita Whiten, to attend Island Ignite. And Island Ignite is a camp based at the Victoria Fire Department, and it's modeled on a program from the Lower Mainland. And it's a way to empower youth, and specifically female youth, to aspire to greater things through firefighting. And they get immersed in firefighting. Some of the drills, we outfit them with gear. That's Ecolot fire rescue gear that Sarita's wearing there. She went down to Victoria for the weekend, and thanks to our Firefighter Association, she got to do that. So, and another way the association gives back is through the Sandy Henry Jr. Memorial Scholarship. Last year's winner was Rihanna Garcia, so that goes annually to a high school student, and we've refined the qualifications for that grant this past year and up the money to $1,500 annually now to a student. So a lot of these fundraising activities where you see the fire department out raising money, these are the types of things that money goes to. So. Some of the community events we were involved in, High Ground Hike, and just a reminder, our High Ground Hike, although we haven't advertised yet, we're still working on the details for this year's. It's going to be April 13th, and it'll be from Big Beach up to the high school. Still finalizing the details, but once again, as we did a couple years ago, the University of Ottawa and the National Research Council of Canada is coming out here to do some tsunami evacuation modeling, and they'll be out here taking part and handing out GPS transponders to willing participants and collecting the data, and then they'll be sharing that data with us to help us improve our emergency evacuation plans. So looking forward to having them out here again. The PRASGAL, Pacific Rim Arts Society, was a new one that we got involved in last year. The Firefighter Association got involved with last year as far as fundraising, and that not only was it was a great time by all the firefighters that worked there, but was also a significant fundraiser. And again, to help us, give back to the community by sponsoring these youth. And we used to have the Porsche Club every year would come down for years, and then they stopped coming a few years ago. And that was a real big shot in the arm to the fire department and the society, in that a lot of that money went right back to equipment to save the taxpayer, such as our quad and our side-by-side. Those were 100% funded through Porsche Club money, as is our rescue tools, our Jaws of Life that we use. That was entirely through fundraising. So no tax dollars involved, and that's about $90,000 just in rescue gear. So that's what we do with the fundraising when we're out there with the handouts. We took part in the Canada Day celebration, Yuki Days Parade, Ukilit Elementary School Pack Barbecue. The Halloween Howl was resurrected again this year. We had a little bit of a bonfire across yonder there. Remembrance Day ceremony, and then new this year again, the association got involved with the breakfast with Santa, and we're hoping to do that again next year, build on that. So, and on the picture there might be heard, that's our ESS trailer. That's again was purchased in 2021, I believe, through UBCM grant. So that provides equipment and some survival equipment, but mostly equipment for our ESS responders. And that was, again, through 100% funded through grant. So that's that trailer that's currently living on the fire hall property there. And then just some random shots of some of the events. Where you can see Deputy Chief McCurry's welcoming a movie star to the Praz Gala here. So again, that is scheduled to happen, I believe, May 31st of this year. Can you back it up, Nancy? No, I'm just kidding. Yuki Days Parade. We started a couple years ago, just at a whim. One of the jokers in the rescue truck had the music on the loudspeaker, and people started dancing, and the members started dancing, and so we've kind of built the fire department dance team, which has become a theme. We were hoping it would gain more momentum last year, but there was a few more members. But we're building on that. But it was good, and it was quite entertaining. So. And of course, in July, we held our 75th anniversary open house that was very well attended. And it was really neat to see some of these kids that were dressed up as firefighters and just wanting to get right in there and do some of these things. So it was a great day. Halloween Hell, and again, we're hoping to do that again this year. That was the first time it's been done since I've been here. So look to us to be involved in that again this year, hopefully. Significant milestones that were reached by some of our members in 2024. So Firefighter Clayton, 10 years. Firefighter Howe, 10 years. Firefighter Martin, 10 years. And of course, the good-looking guy on the right there, 25 years, Deputy Chief Fortune. So those are the big milestones that we hit as far as service. We were honored to have Madam Mayor present Firefighter of the Year to Elsa Terry. Elsa joined us 2 years ago and finished her 1001 certification in record time, along with a couple others. And she's actually she's the director of the Social Committee, which is a subcommittee of the Firefighters Association. So she was the one that really spearheaded the relationship with Praz. And it's just a real nice person and a great addition to our team. And then last year, the association decided to honor, of course, Ted and Ted's commitment to the community and attendance, and so came up with the Ted Youth Tank Attendance Award. And Adam Firefighter Howe won it once again, and he'll probably continue to win it. But he's very, very dedicated. So and we're very honored to have Tracy Youth Tank present that award. And of course, there's a group shot. Most of the firefighters and their partners. And just a reminder that without the support of those people, we wouldn't be able to do what we do, leaving on a whim and not knowing when we're coming home and things like that. So just a group shot. So, and I believe that's about it. One thing I should recognize though today, Lieutenant Gray is here, and she's been a long time serving firefighter. I know you didn't come here for this, but she just recently announced her resignation. So she's a very busy businesswoman and competing priorities, and has given us 6.5 years-ish. Yeah. She got here she was a fresh-faced recruit along with Deputy Chief McCurry when I got hired here. They were the two newbies, and it seems like that was just yesterday, but that was a couple of years back now. So I just want to acknowledge her service. And with that, I would gladly take any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Questions for the Chief? Comments?
No questions, but I'm sorry we missed the High Ground Hike again because it's the AVICC meetings are the same weekend.
Yeah, unfortunately, it ties in with Tsunami Preparedness Week. Yeah, but I appreciate the acknowledgement.
We'll be there in spirit, promise.
Through the Mayor, thank you.
And definitely May 31st for the gala with Praz. That's something to look forward to for sure. Councillor Anderson?
Oh, I just wanted to thank you for the comprehensive report. It was a pleasure to read, and I'm always astounded by what a deal we get as a municipality. By it's the amount of work you guys do. It's completely different than it was back in the 10 years ago or 20 years ago with a volunteer department. And you guys know how I feel about this, and I just thank you so much for what you do.
Through the Mayor, thank you. It really is an honor, and I think if you ask any of our members, they'll say it's an honor to serve. We absolutely are right that it's changed a lot, and since I joined 20-something years ago, and even when I got here, my mandate was to make sure we're compliant, and that was tough to come into a very established fire department. There were some long-time members that we lost, but but I look at where we are now as far as training and knowing that we're trained and we're compliant with and we're where we need to be helps me sleep and hopefully helps the residents sleep.
It's also your 25th anniversary as a firefighter. Am I correct on that? Pretty recently?
Through the mayor, perhaps.
More than perhaps. That's
Yes.
a known fact,
Yes,
actually.
indeed.
Just want to say.
I think I signed something a week or so ago about that.
Through the mayor, yes, I believe you may have. So thank you for.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations. And thank you so much for all you do, and thank you for the great report.
My pleasure. Thanks.
The last item is just support for UBCM resolution. We're going to see dozens of these coming across our desk and up until September when the UBCM conference arrives. So, mayor's announcements. Okay, I'll give you a minute and I'll go first. All right. Unfortunately, we've all missed this one. The Chamber of Commerce was hosting a Coast Blue Economy Mixer at the brewery this evening from 4:30 to 6:30. So sorry you all missed that. The Whale Festival starts this weekend on Saturday with the parade, and don't forget the Chowder Chowdown on Sunday. I had a meeting with Gord Johns last week and invited him to be a guest judge, so he's going to come and do that on Sunday. And Lisa Aye from Sobo is going to be competing in the Chowder Chowdown this year. So be there. It's going to be great.
Who are the other judges?
I'm one. Oh, do you want to be one?
Love to be one.
Talk to the Rotary. They're the ones organizing it.
Okay.
Betty Winpenny.
Okay.
Speak to Betty.
Text her right now.
Okay, so Councillor Anderson.
Still not ready. No, not too much from me. Just a couple of things. Well, the one was a great meeting that we had, council to council with the Uklula Thought Nation. It was last Thursday, the 6th. Is that right? Yeah, and that was. I really enjoy those, and I see the relationship growing, and I think that's incredibly positive and beneficial. And we really got to talk about some good things at that meeting, and I think we've got a path forward on a couple of different items that are really going to benefit both of us down the road. Other than that, I met with Avi Bryant at one point with you on the weekend, and we got to chat about some things about possible electric boat building in the future for Ucluelet and this sustainable energy project that's down the road, which also ties into another meeting that I had earlier today with Coast, which is a nonprofit group that brings in several marine-related industries and advocates on behalf of they also have government organizations as part of them, so they're in town. I don't want to make any announcements about what's being talked about until the time comes, and then we have another meeting with them tomorrow that you and I will be at, I believe, right? And yeah, that's it for me. And then we're off to LGLA right after that meeting.
That's right.
That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Hoare.
Nothing to report other than sadness that I have to work and can't do Chowder Chowdown this year.
Oh, you're working at the co-op?
Yeah. I know. Feel free to sneak me over tastes.
Okay.
Quite happy to be, distance guest judge. Yeah. Other than that, nothing. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Mafty.
I also attended the meeting with Ucluelet. It was very, very interesting and productive, and I also went to the opening of the Ucluelet Aquarium on the 1st, and that was good times had by all. And yeah, I went in there the day before, and it looked like a bomb had gone off, and somehow, like overnight, everything just got transformed, and it looked beautiful. And there's a lot of work to put that together, and a great way to celebrate this remarkable little attraction in our community.
Great, thank you. I missed that one.
And a resource, not just an attraction, but a resource. Oh, there's my microphone. That's okay.
Well, it's on now.
Ukulele Aquarium.
All right, for me, February 26th, I attended a Tourism Ucluelet meeting. It was strictly online, but they're always interesting to see what they're up to. And then an ACRD meeting in the afternoon. That's the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District. That evening was the Ucluelet Chamber of Commerce AGM from 5 till 8 at Blackrock in the ballroom. And I was a speaker, and Gord Johns was the guest speaker. So that was great of him to attend and be a part of that. As most of you know, Gord was the executive director of the Tofino Chamber of Commerce for many years. So chambers of commerce are near and dear to his heart. I had the honor of conducting the election. They had 7 directors returning and 7 new directors. So a total of 14 out of a possible 15 seats. I don't think the chamber has had that many directors in probably 20 years. So that was really great. February 27th, the next morning, I had a meeting with MP Gord Johns. We asked for a letter of support for the Canadian Housing Infrastructure Grant, and he provided that. That just came through March 4th, so that was great to have a letter of support from him. February 28th, I attended the BC Transit celebration at the Ucluelet Secondary School. It was beautiful and sunny, which was a bonus because it was outside. The ACRD reps and BC Transit dignitaries were there. They're taking over, as you know, our bus service as of March 1st with 5 brand new buses. So you will have seen them driving around town, white with sort of a chartreuse green. And they're beautiful. I had a chance to go inside one at that celebration. It was great. March 5th, I attended an ACRD Committee of the Whole meeting. It was to do with budget, as it has been for the past few months. This one was going over the region-wide services. And those region-wide services include the 911 telephone system, general government services, the regional grants in aid, the regional parks budget, and the regional planning budget. So those were the items that we discussed at the Committee of the Whole meeting. March 6th, I was at the Resort Community Collaborative Mayor's meeting. There's 14 resort municipalities, and we get together once every couple of months. It's now being changed to the first Thursday of every month because there's been some momentum with the Ministry of Tourism, Arts, Culture and Sport with our ongoing discussion of a potential new tax or a revised tax to help us mitigate the tourists taxing our infrastructure. So 11 of the 14 of us were on that call, along with 2 people from the Ministry of Tourism, Arts, Culture and Sport. Later that evening was the meeting with the Ucluelet government, which is, as Councillor Anderson said, always really interesting topics that we discuss and shared visions. March 7th in the morning was an iced tea meeting. So for those, I try not to use too many acronyms. It's the Island Coast Economic Trust. And those meetings, there's only like 3 or 4 of them a year. But there was lots of background information provided at that meeting. Sinala Planning is a group that has been engaged to engage with the 53 nations that are in this region, and the region that supports iced tea is the North Island Sunshine Coast, and so that's the Regional Advisory Committee. And so they have engaged with the 53 nations in that territory regarding having representation on the advisory committee. And It sounds like all 53 are very interested in doing that. So it's some regional governance work. And then 2 funding requests were reviewed and moved forward to the board of directors. March 8th, that was Saturday, I had an all-day meeting in Port Alberni with the ACRD, a workshop on board governance. And then, of course, 3 of us are going to LGLA, that's Local Government Leadership Academy Conference in Richmond, and we leave tomorrow. So that conference is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And that's it for me. We are now moving on to question period. This is an opportunity for the public to ask questions and comment on matters within Council's jurisdiction. Representations about bylaws that Council is prohibited from holding a public hearing on, or bylaws that were subject to a public hearing, are not permitted at this time. Are there any audience members that wish to address Council? Seeing none. Have we received any emails to communityinput@ucluelet.ca, Ms. Owen?
We do have one email that came in regarding the 4-way stop. It's short, so I will read it.
Okay, thank you.
For public input, I would like to propose that Council directs staff to place one of these stop signs at Peninsula and Main for additional safety in this dangerous location. I will forward this email to Council. It is from Judy Gray, and I'll forward it so that you can see the link. I won't bring it up, but...
Okay, thank you. That was the spot I was referring to, that's an accident waiting to happen where an accident has never happened. But let's look at the correspondence. And are there any members of the public attending by Zoom or telephone that wish to address Council?
If anyone on Zoom wishes to speak, please raise your hand. Telephone *9. No hands are raised at this time.
All right, thank you. So I will move that the March 10th, 2025 regular council meeting be closed to the public at 7:11 pursuant to the following sections of the community charter. 90(1)(a), personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality or another position appointed by the municipality. And 90(1)(i), the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Hoare seconds. All in favour? None opposed. That carries. Thank you, and thanks for being here, everyone. Yay, audience. Yeah, we'll take a 5-minute break. Yeah.